Are we ready to get started? Okay, thank you everybody for coming back either online or into the chamber for today's reconvened council meeting for March. I'm going to pass over to the Chief Executive for attendance.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, members. To all members of Derry City and Strabane District Council, you're hereby summoned to attend this reconvened monthly meeting of the council, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the council chamber, Thursday, the 30th of March at 2 o'clock. Alderman Breslin.
An apology, John.
Alderman Devaney.
Here.
Alderman Guy. Alderman Hussey. Alderman Carrigan. Alderman McCready. Alderman McMorris.
Here, John.
Alderman Thompson.
An apology, John.
Alderman Wark. Councillor Jason Barr.
Here, John.
Councillor Raymond Barr. Councillor John Boyle.
Online.
Councillor Michaela Boyle.
And Shaw John online.
Councillor Carr. Councillor Cusack.
Here, John.
Councillor Dobbins. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Doyle.
Here, John.
Councillor Alex Duffy.
Shaw.
Councillor Sandra Duffy.
Shaw.
Councillor Edwards.
And Shaw online, John.
Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Ferguson.
Here, John.
Councillor Gallagher.
Shaw.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney. Councillor Jackson.
Shaw.
Councillor Kelly. Councillor Logue. Councillor McGinley. Councillor McGowan.
He's going.
Councillor Maguire. Councillor McHugh.
Shaw online, John.
Councillor McKinney. Councillor Mooney. Councillor Norris. Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Riley.
Here.
Councillor Sinoy Barr.
Yeah, John.
And Councillor Tierney. Thank you, members.
Thank you, John, for taking us through that. Broadcast and statement. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This webcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. If you're seated in the lower public seating media area, it's possible that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility of your image will become part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human and data protection rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should move to the upper public gallery. Also, anyone online, please be reminded of the etiquette and keep your cameras and mics off unless speaking. Please use the chat box should you wish to make a request to speak, and our privacy notice is on the website. Okay, thank you. So we will make a start. There is no chairperson's business at today's meeting, but in the spirit of generosity, I am going to ask Alderman Wark to come in.
Thank you for that, Mayor. I really appreciate it. You just really caught me off guard. Okay, members, I think I brought it up yesterday. You're all well aware. And it was referenced an 8-year-old girl from Nottingham, a little girl, Matilda Hardy. And basically, Matilda lost her one of her grandparents, and she came up with an idea of the post box to heaven. Now, I was approached by a girl, Jill Robinson, who's in the district. They lost a loved one, and it was more for her kids. They obviously, with the bereavement, is something everybody in the district unfortunately goes through, and it's very difficult for everyone, especially younger people. So what I'm proposing today, Mayor, is that to let people send letters to their loved ones, a heartwarming idea. Is they have white post boxes in their cemeteries around the district, and I think it's a nice one. I appreciate you letting me on here, Mayor, and really catching me off guard on this one. I didn't think I was getting it because I was looking there to see where I was going to try and get it on today again. But members, it's obviously somebody approached me about this, and I think it's a lovely gesture that way, and it obviously helps with the bereavement side of things. And I know there's one council area throughout Northern Ireland that already has it, and I say it would be rolled out further. So as we always do, we do really lead the way or lead the frontier throughout all the councils, and I appreciate it. I'll get the proposal now ready. If you give me 2 minutes, Mayor, just to put that up.
Thank you, Alderman Mark. Councillor Barr.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Alderman Mark for bringing this up. It is a very great thing to bring into the cemeteries across the council area, and it's something that I would definitely support and seeing. And I've seen the story as well that Alderman Mark referenced to, and I'm sure that a lot of people would appreciate this coming to the cemeteries within the council area. But one thing that I could ask, Mayor, if possible, in Strabane, there's only one council-owned cemetery in the Strabane town, but the rest of them are owned by the churches. So if this motion does pass today, could the council write a letter to the churches around Strabane asking could they adopt the same thing within the graveyards around Strabane town if possible? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Alderman Work for bringing this forward. I think it's something that was really a fantastic idea. I know grief hits us all differently, and children, it's hard to imagine what they consider when people just suddenly die. So to have a postbox in our graveyards and cemeteries would be a great way to kind of try and process that. So, Mayor, I'm really pleased you let him come on the chair's business because we were chatting about it before. So I'm happy to second the proposal for Alderman Work, and hopefully we can roll it out across our city and district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to Graham. We were both of us sitting here yesterday scrolling through to find out where he could get this in. So I'm sure he's delighted to get it mentioned. I think it's a great idea, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. An interesting methodology of continuation from yesterday, and thanks, for accepting that from Alderman Bork. Reference Councillor Barr's suggestion of writing to the churches. Would it be the intention that the letter boxes would be provided by council to those non-council areas who were prepared to mount them?
I think we would need to bring a paper back on the cost implications of that. Councillor Jackson.
Good Mayor, and I know there's there's a substantial amount of business to be done today, and we don't like pop-up motions coming towards council without prior notice, but this is one that we fully support, and thank Alderman Mark for bringing it. It's already been outlined that people deal with grief in different ways, and our council go to great lengths to support people in any way we can, and this is another example of where we can. So we would look forward to that paper coming back around how this can be practically rolled out.
Thank you. No further speakers on the matter. So I thank Alderman Work that your proposal has passed. So thank you very much. Okay, so into the business of the meeting, as we left off yesterday, we were moving straight into motions. So I'm going to call on Councillor Raymond Barr.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're seconded, and seconded by Councillor Gallagher.
I think the motion is read. I think it goes without saying that there's limited activities for children with additional needs, and indeed families of children with additional needs in our district. I think the nearest facility to Strabane is Grange Park in Omagh, which boasts specialised inclusive play equipment and a sensory garden. So families must travel a significant distance to enjoy a bit of leisure or recreational time with their children. This travelling alone can be stressful or even traumatic for parents. A provision such as described in the motion would help alleviate this imbalance and should be doable, given we have leisure centres within a reasonable travel distance. Swimming has proved to be a highly effective form of therapy with many benefits, such as helping to relax and reduce stress, improving motor functions such as coordination and balance, encouraging social skills by interaction and engaging with others, encouraging language and communication skills when in a state of relax and comfort. We have not a full special needs school in Strabane, which, because of a lack of space for expansion, is having to utilise areas otherwise used for recreation or for general use. Our leisure centres are one of the few facilities we have that gives us the opportunity to play an active part in providing some sort of therapy to those with additional needs. And I feel we should be taking a proactive and leading role in making this happen. These families faced a lot of challenges during lockdown. I would like this council to take the lead in the week that it is Autism Acceptance Week by passing this motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Other Councillor Barr, Councillor Jason Barr.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Raymond Barr for bringing this very important motion forward. And the SDLP are in full support of this, and this is a very, very timely motion, as this is Autism Acceptance Week also. We will look forward to seeing a report come forward, and hopefully when that does, that everybody in the council and the new mandate can support this going forward. So once again, thanks to Councillor Raymond Barr for bringing this forward, and we are in full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Barr for bringing the motion forward. I think you outlined how Swatman can help with many coordination improvement, social skills, self-esteem when someone is on the autistic spectrum. There are many barriers to families because of waiting lists where they've actually had to access services privately. So having this free service would be great for the city and district. This motion also complements my motion back in June where I'd asked about looking at autism and neurodivergent friendly centres and leisure centres. I'm looking forward to the likes of Autistic Alley presenting as well as other autism and neurodivergent groups presenting to the committee so that we could find out ways and tools that we can help families and of children and young people and adults with autism within our city and district. So, Mayor, we have no problem supporting this motion. I think it's a great idea, and I think there's ways in which our officers could look at possibilities of approaching the Western Trust and PHA and maybe working collaboratively to actually cover the costs of this, because I think it would be a huge benefit to many in our city and district. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy.
Good Mayor, and we would like to thank Councillor Barr for bringing this motion. Sinn Féin's in fully support of the motion. For me personally, I work with young people with learning disabilities, so I personally welcome it as well, and agree that our council facility should be fully accessible for those with learning difficulties. And again, thank Councillor Barr for bringing it today.
Thank you. Councillor McKinney. Okay, Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Barr, for bringing the motion today. People Before Profit fully support it, and I suppose from People Before Profit, we commend James McLean on publicly sharing his autism diagnosis. I think it'll do a lot to cut against continued stigma around it, and also to kind of raise awareness. James McLean is a football legend and superstar, and people wouldn't assume that he would have any kind of disability, but it just goes to show, there's all sorts of disabilities that are hidden, or people manage very well with a disability. But we have to create a society that is aware of people's disability, and then creates conditions where people can fully participate, even with disabilities. So that's why this motion is important, because it's a step in that direction. And last year it was announced that the number of young people or school children here in the north with autism has quadrupled over the last decade, and that is very, very significant. So every time there's cuts for our education budget and other budget, it hits people and young children with disabilities first, and it hits them hardest. And that's why I think we have to, in addition to supporting this motion, we have to push back against education cuts, education authority cuts, and Tory cuts to our education budget that will disproportionately impact all children and people with disabilities. So thanks again to the movers of the motion.
Thank you. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in, and I welcome the notice of motion coming forward here today. And I think anything that we can do as a council to enhance for those with additional needs, and especially autism has been mentioned here, and that's quite rightly in the motion. It does say, you know, activities in the northwest for families most likely have to travel a significant distance to have any availability. This can be costly and difficult as well. And look, I do take the very last line. The provision would help immensely, as most people have a leisure centre that is within a reasonable travel distance. And, you know, I come as a rural councillor. It's an issue that needs to be raised and around leisure for our rural dwellers out there. But we are happy to support the proposal here. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Mark.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me on. Councillor Barr contacted me still on the motion, and once he said, I thought it was absolutely brilliant motion they bring forward the council, and I was on the phone to a few family members, even for Floyd syndrome, and they did find it very difficult to get the sessions done with the kids with additional needs and stuff like this here. But I think it's a real motion coming on here. It's a good motion for Reconvened, and it's going to benefit a lot of families throughout the district here and the rural throughout the city of Strabane. So well done to Reconvened for bringing this motion forward today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Mark. Councillor Gallagher, do you wish to speak as seconder?
Thank you, Mayor, for letting us in. Thank you, Reconvened, for bringing this forward. I think, Mayor, and what all the previous speakers have said, I think that passing this motion, this will bring council into the 21st century of how we deal with issues within our society. And I think that, you know, and I'll say this about bringing forward a report, but I would say to back it up, like, we do have the facilities and we do have the staff, and I think this could be delivered very much at a minimal cost. That will be a very good string on council's bow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. No further speakers. So, Councillor Barr, would you like to sum up?
Just to say, Mayor, I'd like to thank everybody for the volume of support. It's, as Paul says, I think this could be delivered at a low cost, you know, and that certainly will bring the council in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barr, and everybody seems to be in agreement. So we will say that has been passed unanimously. Thank you. Next motion, Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take it as read.
Yeah, have you a seconder? Councillor Jason Barr.
Thank you. Mayor, this issue has been discussed at council on a number of occasions. And at a previous full council meeting, there was a proposal passed to meet with the Department of Infrastructure, which has since taken place. And to say, Mayor, as almost 9 years as a councillor, it was probably the worst meeting that I had ever participated in with a statutory body. Department for Infrastructure, I'm not sure if there's anybody in the chamber was at it. Graham was at it. They just didn't want to know. They've had numerous reports of incidents on these footpaths and around the main street of Strabane. They hadn't a care. They were very flippant. They had an approach was, it's not our responsibility. If any claims come in, we're blaming council. It was a brutal meeting, to say the least. And I was very disappointed in it. There was no discussion around how we could fix this. There's people in Strabane that are falling on these footpaths, and they have a real potential to be life-changing injuries. We had an elderly man there fell and broke a leg in a couple of places. I know a number of people who fell. One lady fell and she had a stoma bag on, and it came out, and there was a whole embarrassing mess, to say the least. And it's in different areas. So, and long story short, at a push, really push them into saying is there a potential that you could form a partnership with council around how we prevent this from happening in the future? And they says they might consider that. So I'd agree that they'll bring a motion to council that council, as the motion says, could undertake some sort of study, have a look and see what the possible way is that we could cure this in the future to prevent this happening on a constant basis. And as part of the motion, Mayor, and I'm well aware there was, through a rich process, there was elements around huts. But, and their blame game, and as I said, their blame game, and they made no bones about it, blame the council, that they were saying the footpaths were washed, blah, 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 that would prevent this, which I don't think it was. You see, in their studies that they'd done previously, they studied this stone when it was dry, which is about 3 weeks of the year that we have. This and these footpaths become unsafe when they're wet. People end up on their backside, on their back, on a constant basis around the main street of Strabane. And it shouldn't be happening. And when you hear that, and then they're saying, oh, there's scum built up, and if council kept them clean, blah, blah, blah. So I says, look, in the interim, that if council would consider to avoid that blame game, that people who have responsibility for these footpaths, that council would introduce some street cleaning within this specific area that would pick the scum off it. And when we're getting our studies done, we will find a long-term solution to this problem. But Mayor, what I would say is this can't, shouldn't, won't, can't be left untreated. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. And like Councillor Gallagher, I was in attendance at that meeting, which was held in the Strabane office, and totally concur with his remarks. The offhand nature from officials was disturbing, to say the least, because as Councillor Gallagher has referred to there, we're looking at a situation where folk have had accidents and, as has been said, life-changing injuries have resulted. The whole idea, in one particular location, I am certain that if one were to go within DFI criteria, it would be an area that should be gridded on the gradient on that particular small area, though it be, but it definitely needs to be sorted. One of the solutions, as Councillor Gallagher has referred to there, was regular cleaning to ensure that there isn't the build-up of the green algae that will result in a slippery surface. So totally support the motion from Councillor Gallagher. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Hussey. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in, and we will fully support Councillor Gallagher's motion. But I'd just like to add that, you know, the ongoing neglect by the DFI is leading to more accidents. It's leading to possible visit to our A&E, overstretched A&E, I should add, and then there's a possibility of financial claim against DFI roads, and everybody knows the budgets are tight. So why don't we act on it before it gets to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Councillor Michaela Boyle.
Thank you, Mayor. And Sinn Féin will be supporting this motion, Mayor. First of all, I would like to, I also attended the same meeting in the Strabane Council offices, and I want to first of all address the dismissive attitude of senior officers of DFI in this regard, on this matter. I also was very disappointed that two very senior officials from DFI agreed to meet with elected representatives to inform us of 3 words: not our responsibility. dismissing the hazardous issues that we are referring to here today. Mayor, I was sent, like others, there was a very serious incident, particularly on the main street outside a shop, the DVH shop, and we all know that there was left one man very seriously injured where he fell, and I hope he's recovering well from that fall. There's that part of the town centre, and there are other parts of the town centre that are just equally as dangerous and hazardous. I wrote, like other elected reps, to DFI at the time, asking them to address it. In a letter back to me on the 7th of February from DFI, they said that they are liaising with Derry and Strabane District Council to ascertain the specification for the material that is currently in place, and once they're in receipt of that information, they'll revisit the matter. I asked at the meeting for an update, and I believe at that point they hadn't even contacted our council in regard to this. Serious issues, as I said, in regards to the periods of adverse weather and other, it's not just adverse weather times. There's other serious risks whenever there's inclement weather conditions, such as rainwater, heavy rain and heavy downpour as well, makes these areas almost impassable. Salting or gritting may not be unreasonable in these areas if that could be explored. I understand there's also issues in terms of grit residue that can make places, more at risk. But certainly prior to periods of adverse weather conditions, if the surfaces could be demossed and cleaned and salted or gritting, if that can be explored. But I would just, Mayor, be interesting to hear back from Council in regards to their work with DFI thus far on this issue. And I hope there has been work explored and
Councillor Boyle.
I hope that there has been ongoing work in this regard to date, and we'll hear of that outcome very soon. Thank you, and we'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in, and I welcome this notice of motion coming forward here. I also attended the same meeting, and look, some very disappointing news. The DFA sort of washed their hands off the responsibility of it. And they said, look, they would need to speak maybe to council to maybe have more intense cleaning of the area done, more frequent area to have it cleaned. And then they were to talk. They talked about needing to have discussions with council to go into consultation in relation to the quality of the material and find out the best way forward. Which we all know, consultation costs money, it costs time. But I think the word used that day, and look, I know I spoke on this before, but I couldn't remember the word was used, but it came to my head and I wrote it down. I think they were getting off the hook with this word called a latent defect, L-A-T-E-N-T, defect. You know what it means? A hidden flaw or defect in the workmanship, design, materials, or construction of a building that is not visible or patent to a competent person or within their advice on an inspection. So that was the word, and I think people will agree with me now that that was the word was used. I couldn't remember it the last time I spoke on it, but that is what they were getting off the hook on, that word latent defect, and they said that voided them of any responsibility. But look, welcome the notice of motion coming forward here, and our party and myself are happy to support it, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Councillor Jason Barr.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Gallagher for raising this very important issue within the Strabane Town Centre. Like all Strabane elected reps and Sperrin reps, we've all heard constituents regarding their issues on this. I'm not surprised that the DFI's dismissive attitude, that seems to be their usual thing, but they don't like to take responsibility for certain things. This brings me back to the Ballycommon railings. They kept saying it was the housing executive's responsibility, the housing executive's responsibility. Then it actually came that it was DFI's responsibility for the railings, and then they turned around and says, "Oh, we can't afford it." And then, and then they turn around and say, "Oh, if you pay for it, we'll install it." So they always seem to have the wrong attitude regarding things in certain certain levels. But definitely the SDLP is in full support of this, and also I'll bring it then back to the public realm. For the design of this, hope that council officers then, whenever the design for the materials been used, that I hope that the materials been used around the town centre aren't something similar, so that the same issues don't keep reoccurring. But I hope that DFI listen to this council's call and that they finally will do something about it, and that this can be resolved once and for all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Gallagher for bringing this motion. Previous speakers have covered everything there, I think, comprehensively, so I'll keep this brief. But it's just for the record, I too attended the meeting, and I can safely say it's the most negative meeting I've ever attended in 4 years in council. I think flippant was the perfect word to describe the attitude of the DFI officials. It was simply an exercise in passing the buck with no one prepared to take responsibility. It was like a school teacher-pupil environment. How many more people have to be injured on the streets of Strabane before any action is taken? But thank you once again, Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor. And People Before Profit are in full support of Councillor Gallagher's motion. And it's very, very disappointing to hear about the attitude of senior DFI officials at the meeting. We obviously weren't there ourselves, but it's shocking that this is how they would interact with elected reps who are there representing their constituents about a serious matter of safety. And I think the message we have to send as a council to DFI is that there should be no shortcuts when it comes to the safety of our residents. And that's what seems to be happening here. But there just seems to be, whether it is how they're treating people in Strabane, how they're treating people across the district in terms of the state of our roads, how they're treating workers who are demanding a pay uplift. There's a serious problem at DFI. It's not just one issue. It seems to be many, many, many issues. And I think we are going to have to, as a council, attempt to find ways to hold them accountable, because we have to change this attitude problem. Is this a problem with the Northwest? Or is this just an overall problem that is running through the DFI right now? But we're fully supportive of Councillor Gallagher's motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. In the absence of anyone else wishes to speak, could you sum up?
Thank you, Mayor, for letting us back in. And thank you to everyone who has spoke on this and everyone who's given this support. Mayor, I'll just keep it short and sweet, but I would just like to say that, and it looks like this is going to be unanimous, that this is like a serious live issue as we speak, and that Council will do everything in its power to enact this motion as soon as possible. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. And as you said, looks like it's unanimous. No one's speaking against it. So say passed unanimously. And we will move on to the next motion, which is Councillor Edwards, I'm assuming, is online.
Mayor, online.
And Councillor Councillor Jason Barr is seconding the motion. So go ahead.
Yeah, take motion as read, Mayor. Mayor, thank you for letting me bring this motion to council today. And I suppose the overall purpose of the motion is to ensure a quality of spend on capital projects and services across the entire council area, and to provide a detailed report on this, and where variances are identified, to implement a strategy across council to deal with it. Mayor, since becoming a councillor almost 3 years ago, I've heard increasing concerns among my own DA, among the former Strabane District Council area, around the provision of services and capital spend across the area. I'm not going to go into detail on it today. If the motion passes, I would hope that that would be a discussion that we could have after the initial report is brought. But there is a narrative out there, Mayor, that the former Strabane District Council area doesn't get its fair share, and which people believe is the case since amalgamation of council 8 years ago. Mayor, in my view, this issue hasn't been looked at in any great detail, and I do fully respect the work of the officers, too, especially in finance. But I do believe this report would help in identifying all spend and any disparities, and it would be a great starting point for us. And that includes spend on capital projects, council services, grants, and anything else relevant. I do believe there's a massive need to get the facts out there, put on the table. Mayor, the recent rates process, I suppose, is what spurred this motion. It was hugely challenging of all of us, and there's cuts of services across the board. I personally found it very difficult to ascertain how those cuts could affect my own DA, my own area. And I think that linking in this work with the rates making process will be a hugely fruitful task, I suppose, or outcome, especially in the current uncertainty around our future and our finances. I do believe that the breakdown of disparities in spend in the former council area is needed, along with spend per DA. And I know that there's a lot of caveats out there around services that span multiple DAs, like Riversdale or Foyle Arena, just an example. I do think, Mayor, another issue worth considering is looking at spend within our rural areas, and that we're doing all we can for rural areas, because being out in recent weeks, camps in rural areas, I'm told that all they get is their bins empty. So I think it would be good to look at that. If disparities are identified, the motion does propose that a task and finish group is set up. Well, first of all, to look at the initial report, and I'm not being prescriptive on the metrics. I'm happy that officers and members of that group would agree that the metrics. But if disparities do exist, the motion's calling on a strategy, something like a leveling up strategy within our council, to ensure that equality in spend across the entire area. And this again would feed into the rates making process. The financial working group and the capital development group is an overarching strategy, which would be my aim to allow informed decision making, ensuring fairness and equality in spend across the council area. Mayor, on the task and finish group, I do believe that.
Councillor Edwards, you're over your time, but
I'll just finish, Mayor.
That's
I do believe task finish group should be open to all interested members. And just on a final note, Mayor, I hope everyone can support the motion. Look forward to listening to people's consideration, and looking forward to considering any amendments if brought forward. But this motion isn't about division. It's about ensuring fairness and equality across our entire council area. Mayor, thank you very much for allowing me to bring the motion.
thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to the mover of the motion for tabling it today. Mayor, on the face of it, I think this motion appears quite complicated, but I think it's the subsequent report rather than the motion itself which will be proved to be the complicated part. That said, we have no issue with scrutinising the figures. Though I think it will not be as simple or straightforward as people might think to do a comparative analysis across the districts, given the different legal parameters both council models operate under. And given those complications, I also have concerns the cost of producing such a report could very quickly start to snowball. I have to say the picture that's painted in the motion isn't one that immediately springs to mind. I'm conscious that Derry City and Strabane District Council is incredibly mindful of the Rural Needs Act and our community plan and all of our funding models that we adopt. And from working with many council officers over the years, I'd like to think that distribution parity would apply even without such an act or a plan. Now, I sit in the Rural Issues Group, a partner-led delivery model under community planning, and which I had the privilege of chairing this past 2 years. It's a pity the mover of the motion wasn't in attendance at that meeting yesterday morning to hear council being commended by our partners for the transformed landscape that exists today compared to just a few years ago. I think it can be too easy when we're in this chamber to get caught up in the bubble of what we do in here, so it was really refreshing to hear those unsolicited comments. And it got me reflecting on some of the Tyrone and rural-based projects I've been privileged to be a part of as a member of this council. 6.1 million on the Rural Development Programme, which delivered 52 new rural businesses, over 150 new rural jobs, as well as delivering the International Appalachian Trail, village renewal projects and village plans. 6.5 million on the Derg Active Project, multi-million pound redevelopment of Melvin Park, 1.3 million internationally acclaimed Sperrin Sculpture Trail, $250,000 in the Mountain Bog and Forest Project, and to my own delight, Mayor, after more than 50 years of lobbying, we are on the cusp of delivering a management plan for the Sperrin area of outstanding natural beauty. Those are hugely significant and transformative investments and are just some of the headline figures off the top of my head. I know this isn't all council money, nor does it represent the entirety of the council investment, but we can always do with more. But having sat on both councils, it's difficult for me to see how projects on this scale could have been leveraged and delivered as quickly as they have under the predecessor council model. Mayor, I won't be around when the report is presented, but having fought my corner over the past 12 years with the steadfast support of party colleagues and with members right across the chamber, I suspect the report isn't going to be the gotcha moment that the text of the motion assumes. However, there's no value in trying to second guess what any report might say before it is written. So I'm content to support the motion today, safe in the knowledge that my colleagues on council will be very able to challenge or commend the findings when they're presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. And both presentations contributions, I should say, that members have already heard are extremely valid and worthy of the attention of this council. By the way, can I pay tribute to Councillor Kelly for his work as chair of the Rural Issues Group, which he has highlighted there. He's right. There was praise for council within that group. But I think Councillor Edwards also puts his finger on an issue, and there's no truth in the rumour that I had anything to do with the writing of this motion, as some people might think. But there is a perception, and the way to counter that perception is with facts, and to get the facts from our officers as to what has been going on over this past 8 years will be a benefit. It will be useful not alone to us, but to those who will occupy this chamber from the new mandate of council. Another issue that has arisen, and on the basis of that issue, I do want to propose an amendment or an addition to the motion, and I will propose or identify the amendment first, and then I'll carry on addressing that amendment. Council will identify what administrative savings have been achieved year on year since the amalgamation of Derry City Council and Strabane District Council relative to the last 4 years of their previous separate existence. And the rationale of that, I know it hasn't been seconded yet, but just the rationale of that amendment is there are folk who are saying, well, what has been achieved? You know, we were promised savings with amalgamation. So it's really just to identify those. And I know that we have previously been told, yes, savings have been made, but those savings filter themselves out in projects, etc., rather than what people would see in direct rates benefit to them. So just to identify that there have been savings, if that's possible, because it is a deep dive, as Councillor Kelly has referred to there. This will be a deep dive into all of these issues. So that can, I believe, easily be included within the original motion. I beg to propose the amendment. I have no seconder yet, but
I need a seconder. No seconder. Sorry. Moving on. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in. And look, I have no problem from our party and for myself in supporting the notice of motion going forward here. I think there's nothing wrong with bringing a report back and delving into that financial end that Councillor Edwards is looking for. And I have to say, Mayor, the last 4 years, and look, since I got elected in 2019 in that Sperrin area, I've been an advocate for rural issues and around Strabane as well. And I have to say, Mayor, being on that rural issues group, and I just want to commend Councillor Kelly on the way he chaired that committee this last number of years, and wish him well as he moves forward. That is a committee that a lot of issues have been raised, and Councillor Kelly has, quite rightly mentioned a lot of investment that has went on. So, when in 2019, I was listening, and even before that, when the new councils amalgamated, there were always this argument and disparity between councillors from Strabane and ones down here from Londonderry, the difference between the money spent in Strabane, and they always said that the money was greater down here. But this report here will bring this all into the spectrum and see. But I believe, Mayor, a lot of good work has been done. Investment has been carried out. A lot of investment has been carried out in that the old Strabane Council, or Strabane Council as it is now. And look, at the end of the day, I do believe there is more work to be done. There are more calls for more work to be done, even through that rural issues group. And I do apologise, I didn't get to it yesterday due to other stuff. And it has been a very, very vital tool in that fight for the argument and around rural issues. But Chair, happy to support the notice of motion.
Thank you. Alderman Devaney. Councillor Raymond Barr.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Kelly said the motion was a bit complicated, and that may be so. But the problem's certainly not complicated. The problem's there for all to see. I've long believed Strabane, the rural areas, we're not getting a fair crack of the whip. And I'll just quote a few examples. The river walkway, damaged in 2018 in flooding, still hasn't been sorted despite a paper coming to committee 3 years ago with 5 options for alternatives. The promised public realm works still remains just that, a promise. There's no progress with the Multown Grammar School site. Perfect for a park, something that the town is crying out for. More so now that the river even looks dead in the water. Play parks are a big issue in Strabane. There's a shortage of them. Plus the play parks that we already have, most of them aren't fit for purpose. We had a retail park with 4 units employing upwards of 60 people, bulldozed to facilitate the relocation of Lidl with the creation of 10 new jobs. A net loss of 40 to 50 jobs and a blow to consumers. How did this project even get past the planning stage? We have a little or no encouragement from council on the Strabane Athletic Football Club planning application. Our rates have increased by 39% since the amalgamation of councils. We contribute to the Jazz Festival. We contribute to Visit Derry, who do nothing for the rural areas. It is, to put it mildly, not good enough. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting us in. And I have to say, Mayor, I was a bit surprised when I seen this proposal, because it was coming from someone in a party. And I have to say, I have to congratulate Councillor Edwards for having the bravery to step outside the party machine to bring such a motion. And I think what has sort of brought this to a head for Councillor Edwards was when we've seen the recent debacle around the Ritz, when we've seen councillors from Strabane being forced by their party leader in this council to make cuts that was directly impacting in Strabane town. And I know in my own heart they didn't want to do it, but they were forced to do it. And like others that are in this chamber, they've also been forced to vote against the people that elect them because of a party machine. And I think that this motion breaks that cycle. There is no harm, none whatsoever, in transparency. And like Councillor Barr there says, that whether it's perception or whether it's real, when the issues are what has been promised versus what has been delivered, and what has been delivered is very little to be seen on the ground, then that's what reinforces the perceptions. So if we're taking this forward, I think that we might, at some stage, get to breaking this party machine where councillors in here are forced to vote. And we're going on the election now, and some people are going on the defence mode. But this is timely. I welcome the fact that he's stepped outside the machine, because I heard last weekend.
Councillor Gallagher, you're over your time.
One second. Last weekend, we heard his party leader, and his main concerns was around his.
Councillor Gallagher, you are over your time. You are over
and he
your
will do
time.
anything to protect that 17.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher.
Against the people of Strabane.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, look, people before profit are happy to support this. We think that there should be equality. We can't complain about regional disparities and then have disparities within our own council area. So I think we have to work to make sure that all residents right across the district are equally treated by the council. So that's why we're backing it. It is ironic, though, that this is coming from the SDLP, who agreed to put through millions in service cuts that will impact disproportionately people in Strabane and right across the district, who have put through an 8% rate hike that will disproportionately hit people in Strabane in the coming year. And also, if it hadn't been for ourselves and Councillor Gallagher, the SDLP were prepared to slash the budget for the Alley Theatre in the recent rates round. So, look, we're supporting it, but we also are not going to stand here and allow people to hypocritically make it look like they're standing up against cuts and for equality and everything else. So, happy to back the motion, but that's the reality of what's happened in this council.
Thank you, Mayor. And I hadn't planned to speak on this because I think Councillor Edwards has outlined our party's position on it. I want to make it absolutely clear that this motion has been supported by every SDLP elected representative from Culmore to Castledare and everywhere in between. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I think it will do something to point out some of the difficulties that this council face. I would also like to point out, I'm obviously not going to ask him to do it, but I would also like to point out, and members of our party will back me on this, I didn't force anyone to vote for anything. And I genuinely wish, Madam Mayor, that I had the power within the SDLP that Councillor Gallagher seems to think that I do have. The SDLP agreed collectively what we were doing around the rates process. Councillor Gallagher, if people cast their memories back, I made it very clear when we were at, and I'm going to say 7.64 on that particular Friday meeting, that the SDLP were finished and we were not adding anything else on. Councillor Gallagher was still adding things on to that rates bill at that time and then voted against it. Councillor Harkin has spoken about how the SDLP's decision on our own, in a council full of 40, on our own, will negatively impact the people of Strabane, and the funding cuts that we forced through, the SDLP on our own forced through this chamber, will negatively impact the people of Strabane. It's complete and utter nonsense. I wonder, does Councillor Harkin have any idea how his supported Brexit and the funding cuts that came as a result of Brexit will negatively impact the people of the North, let alone the people of Strabane? We will not be taking lessons from Councillor Harkin or Councillor Gallagher on representing people. We've been doing it for a long, long time. Councillor Gallagher on his social media has fed into a narrative, a negative narrative around this council and what we deliver for the people of Strabane. I think the results of this report will show that this council is delivering for the people of Strabane. And Madam Mayor, I will finish. He talked about playing politics. It's only very recently that those social media posts have gone up, just before a council election. I wonder why.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Right, order. One speaker at a time, please. And in the absence of anyone else speaking, I will revert to Councillor Edwards to sum up. But just before that, I would just like to pay tribute to Councillor Kelly as well, and indeed Councillor Maguire and Councillor Boyle, who are not standing again. And I did mention it yesterday, but you all have represented the rural issues in the Strabane area very well. So I would like to put on record my thanks to the three of you. Councillor Edwards.
Mayor, thank you very much. And again, I would echo those on Councillor Kelly. He's been a fine servant for the rural areas. Mayor, I appreciate the widespread support for this, but just to point out just a few issues. Councillor Kelly, they're all great investments. I'm not too sure that they're all council investments, but they're all great investments in the wider rural area. But when you look at a lot of the issues in the Strabane and the Derg, the facilities, Riversdale, play parks and all, they're legacy issues from a former Strabane council that failed to deliver for Strabane people. And we're picking up the tab. I just want to put that in there, Mayor. We're picking up the tab for failure delivery of a Sinn Féin-led council in Strabane for a long time. Completely agree with Alderman Hussey, Alderman Devaney, Councillor Barr, appreciate your support. Councillor Gallagher, who I get on very well with, there was no, the SLP are united in this. There was no forcing anything around rates. We are completely united in bringing this motion and either dispelling the narrative that's out there or proving the narratives out there. This report will deal with that. Councillor Harkin is obviously in election mode and focuses a lot on the SDLP and about rates there. But I hope, well, here locally anyway, I hope his party can explain their position on Brexit and their anti-A5 position that everyone in my DEA is contacting me about. So we chat about, you know, parties in the SDLP and the impact on people making cuts. I hope his party can explain that in Strabane and the Derg, especially in Brexit and A5. Mayor, overall happy happy with the support for the motion. Hopefully, I'm there to review its findings within this council, and I look forward to that, Mayor. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I think today is going to be fun. On that note, everybody did support the motion, so the motion is unanimously passed. So thank you. Next motion is in the name of Councillor Sonoy Barr and Councillor Farrell to move. I'm not sure who's going to take the lead, possibly Councillor Sonoy Barr.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll take the lead and we will take the motion as read.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lillian.
Mayor, I think it's common knowledge that we are in the grip of a housing crisis, and not just here in Derry, but across the north. In the last...
Sorry, Lillian, I need to just ask if Councillor Farrell is content to formally second the motion.
Yes, I am, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so in the last 10 years, the population has grown by more than 90,000 people, yet housing build has not kept pace with this population growth. And as a result, we have a housing crisis that is putting families under huge stress and shutting a generation out of home ownership. For social housing, the latest figures show over 45,000 on the waiting list, including almost 6,000 in our own council area. In the private sector here in Derry, there are typically around 20 to 30 applicants for each rental property. Owning your home is now a distant dream for many. Meanwhile, this council area has the highest population of people presenting as homeless out of any council district. It's as plain as day to anyone looking at this problem that we need to revisit our approach to housing if we are going to cope with the crisis in front of us. Today, there are around 22,000 homes lying empty across Northern Ireland, of which 1,500 are within our council area. The fact that so many homes lie empty in our local council area in the middle of a housing crisis is just unforgivable, and this is it is going unabated while we lack a functioning empty home strategy. And the fact that owners are not even required to provide notice of changes to properties is just absurd. Mayor, the Department of Communities acknowledged that empty homes are a wasted resource. Although addressing the empty homes problem cannot solve housing supply issues alone, they can be part of a holistic approach to providing local affordable housing and regenerating communities. In fact, in 2013, the Department for Communities published an empty home strategy, and a review of this strategy was undertaken in May 2021. The review of the Department for Communities empty home strategy and action plan found that the strategy to ensure that the number of empty homes in Northern Ireland is kept kept to a minimum has had only limited success and made 4 recommendations. Buying back previous social homes, acquiring more properties through long-term leases, the purchase and conversion of non-residential property, and the regeneration of older failing states with derelict housing. This motion is intended to send a clear signal that we cannot allow this situation to continue indefinitely and that the housing crisis must be combated. I hope that all members will support this motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sonoy-Barr. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Sonoy-Barr and Farrell for bringing the motion forward, Mayor. I had a look, and the description of what an empty house is defined as any residential dwelling, regardless how long it's been empty, although it may be for sale. The benefits of bringing that empty home back into use improves not just the appearance of the neighbourhood, regenerates communities, provides local affordable housing, and reduces property deterioration and associated crime. Mayor, there are several points highlighted in the strategy back in 2013 that make a lot of sense. But where are we today? 10 years on, we didn't get the 120 houses a year brought back into the stock that we needed. Mayor, we have landlords selling houses under families because they can't afford the interest rate on their mortgages. The fluctuation is getting too high. I have many families actually in this situation at the moment, and I don't know if any of other members have looked at partially looking at the rent costs. They've gone sky high. We have houses before where people would have been able to get a family home, 4-bedroom in some of our areas for £600, £700 per calendar month. They are now looking at £850 up to £1,400 a month. And that's if you can get a house, because many of my rural villages, there isn't the stock, there isn't the houses. Then we also have over nearly 6,000 people classed as homeless here in our city and district in our housing list. You need well over 200 points for most areas within the area to be considered to be housed. Mayor, we've people on our waiting list for 10 years to be housed, and they live with that daily fear that they're going to get that phone call that their landlord needs them out. This strategy was published in 2013. It's had a review in 2021, and it was ineffective. This motion is coming forward. We have a motion coming forward, later today, where we're looking at rent caps. I wish we could have that power. I don't foresee us being able to be given that power. I wish we could, because it would mean there was more security. But this motion itself from Councillor Sonoy-Barr and Councillor Farrell sets out a strategy in which we could try and meet some of that need, bring those houses back into use, because we really do need them. We are in dire need at this moment in time, especially within our rural villages, for more housing, and empty homes within our city and district could be reused and repurposed so that people have a family home to love. So we're happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Logue.
Thank you, Mayor. And first of all, can I thank the two proposers for bringing this motion. I suppose for our party, the purpose of the empty home strategy is to create an action plan was to ensure that the number of empty homes across the north was kept a minimum, and to identify new opportunities to encourage owners to bring them back to use. The amended definition is to include residential properties regardless of how long they have been empty, and those properties that, although for sale, have had no interest from buyers. The positive benefits to bringing back empty homes into use will help the high demand for housing. It will also prevent negative impact that occurs when homes are left to deteriorate. In February 2020, the number of empty properties across the north was recovered by LPS as 20,116. And at least 2,340 of these have been created from September 2019. And while there is numerous examples why this can happen, or why they are empty, nevertheless, we have a strategy to address this matter. Buying back social homes, offering long-term leases, purchase and converting residential property, as well as proposing a large-scale residential regeneration of older housing estates. While we support the motion, 3 of the 4 actions within the motion are to be addressed to the permanent secretaries for each department. We all know we need ministers in place to drive forward strategies. This will not be achieved until the Assembly is reformed. So I would urge parties to look at all the issues that we have within our council district and get back to work in order to bring some solutions. We will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Logue. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in. Our party has no problem in supporting the notice of motion here, coming forward here. I have to say, I think we're all well versed in relation to the volume of need for housing out there. And I think any initiative across Northern Ireland, and especially within our own council area, to deal with those issues and reinventing the wheel for those houses that are lying out there empty and could be turned in to valuable housing for those very much most in need. And look, many as we're all elected here, I'm sure we have all a long list of people waiting for houses. But Chair, we would be happy to support the notice of motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor. People Before Profit are happy to support the motion. You know, the issue of vacant homes in our communities is a real and massive issue. And unfortunately, the empty home strategy is another important strategy document that, rather than being properly implemented and actually making a difference here, is gathering dust on the shelves of Stormont. And empty homes, you know, is not only a loss of a home for someone who desperately needs a home, but it also impacts the whole street in which that home is in. And this issue is obviously just one arm of the housing crisis that we're facing. We support the housing executive to really lead on this, and we feel that they would be the body to actually address this and lead on this properly. But they must be given the proper funding to do this effectively, so that, you know, if these homes are brought under their control, that they have the resources to properly retrofit them, because a lot of these homes are in poor states of repair, so that they're energy efficient and they're actually future proofed for families for generations to come. And you know, our civil rights movement, one of the pillars it was founded on was the housing crisis. And if we look at where we're at now, you know, 50 years on, you know, it's obviously better, but we're not really where we need to be. So, you know, this has to form part of the bigger movement addressing the housing crisis. Thank you.
Councillor Neil. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Sino Barr has already covered it all adequately, but I think it'd be a bit bizarre for me not to speak on it, considering I'm a joint proposer of this motion, and it's our final council meeting of this term. So everybody is in full agreement with this motion. I think everybody understands the scale of the housing crisis across the north, and specifically here across Derry and Strabane. And, you know, across our council district, there are 5,500 people waiting to be housed, and 4,000 people are experiencing housing stress. And the current housing supply strategy isn't putting a dent on those waiting lists at all. And the current social housing build programme isn't putting a dent on it either. And, you know, the list continues to grow and grow. And as Councillor Sino Barr said, there's over 1,500 empty homes across this city and district. And, you know, that makes no sense whatsoever. We have over 5,000 people waiting to be housed, and there's 1,500 empty homes. And people will rightly be thinking, you know, what is the government doing to try and bring those homes back into use? So there needs to be a real focus on bringing the homes back into use, because, you know, the status quo isn't providing any comfort to anybody in that housing list. In fact, it's nonsensical. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. No further speakers. Okay, back to yourself, Councillor Sonoy, if you would like to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you all for speaking on this motion and for supporting it. I actually completely agree with Councillor Logue. I think ministers do drive the strategy forward. And I wish we had ministers in place right now. Unfortunately, we don't. And in the absence of the ministers, the permanent secretaries are in charge, and we need to see action taken to address housing stress within our city and district and across the region for all the reasons that have been noted right now. For me and for my party, we see rejuvenation of empty homes as a really good way of to maximize all opportunities to meet housing needs and reduce housing stress within our city and district and across the north. So thank you once again for supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. That is another one that has been passed unanimously. So I'm going to move on to the next motion, which is Councillor Tierney to move. And do you have a seconder? Councillor Doyle. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Doyle and Councillor Mooney for seconding the motion. I think, first of all, would like to point out that I fully appreciate that there are areas across this district who would like to have the youth provision that some other areas have, and I know that that's been an issue for people within this council for a long time. May that be community and voluntary sector provision or statutory sector provision. But I think knowing the issues in those particular areas should give those people confidence, in my opinion, to support this notice of motion. We all know the value that youth workers play in our communities and how they, in their very genuine way, guide and support young people throughout their lives and be sometimes a critical friend to young people when needed. And the youth workers within my own DA, and I'm sure this is spread right across the district, are in many ways, in lots of ways, actually, young people's biggest supporter as well and best champion. And I think it's important that we do all we can to maintain and where we can enhance the provision that is there. I think, and Madam Mayor, you will know this, the relationship between youth workers within our own DA, may that be statutory or community and voluntary, is absolutely priceless because they work together regardless of who they are reporting to in the best interests of the community and the best interests of the young people within it. They all play a very important and valuable role within our communities, and I think now is the time where they need our support. Community and voluntary sector youth clubs and youth organisations are being threatened with cuts, as you all probably already know. PE and EA are protecting the budget for statutory sector youth providers, and I think that that's greatly unfair. It's unfair for a number of reasons. When you look at the priorities for youth, 4.3 within their own document, EA talk about a viable alternative and cost-effective option. That is, whether people like it or not within EA, that is the community and voluntary sector. And they are now turning their back on their own document. I think it's important that this council back this notice of motion with a number of asks that are included within it. I think the most important one is that we hear from Youth Work Alliance for a number of reasons to find out how we can support them and their partner organisations across this district and further afield. But I also want to know, and I want council to hear, how this will impact on organisations across our district. Because how it impacts on organisations across our district is then how it impacts on young people's lives across our district. And I think that's the most important thing that we need to be taking away from this. We have a number of motions today, and a number of motions, unfortunately, over this last number of months, which have talked about cuts to particular services. This is one of the first in my memory that talks about directly about cuts to youth provision and youth services within our communities. If we want to encourage young people to be good, hard-working members of society, one of the best ways in my experience to do it is through a good youth club and a good youth provision across this district. One of the ones that I have noticed within my own DA and the partnership that they have with the statutory sector is within the community and voluntary sector, and I think it's time that we stood up, asked the questions of those within DE and DA about what's happening and try to protect these youth organisations. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor McGinley.
Mayor, for letting me in. This is an issue I brought to Health and Communities a number of months ago when the cuts were announced, so it'd be no surprise that it's something that I'm really passionate about. So thanks, Brian, for bringing the motion forward. Back in January, I think it was, myself, Ciara Ferguson, Emily and Christopher Jackson met with the Youth Work Alliance to discuss these concerns, and our party is continuing continuous engagement with the Youth Work Alliance and youth providers across the north, and it's sort of headed up through Danny Baker, who'd be our young person spokesperson. The value of the community and voluntary youth workers alongside the statutory youth workers is really, really hard to quantify. I know that in Craigan specifically, which is my DE, I would rely quite heavily on the youth service to help deal with any issues in the area. You know, they've got on-street teams that are invaluable in terms of dealing with situations that keep young people from becoming criminalised for being involved in things that they don't realise the impact. You know, they're really, really important. A positive intervention that assists our young people. They grow into the type of people that they should be becoming, and they have that positive contribution in supporting the young people. As I say, the youth service in Craigan I would work quite closely with, and I know that for a lot of our young people, you know, their youth workers are the first person they turn to. They might be the only adult in their life that they have that they can turn to if they've got issues, if they've got problems, if they need help with their mental health or anything else, or just general support. So I think these cuts in themselves are despicable. So we fully welcome the motion and we look forward to seeing it roll out. And Councillor Duffy shared a post on Facebook yesterday. It was really, really simple, and it's that youth work works. That's it.
Thank you. You confused me there, Councillor Duffy. Alderman Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, yeah, 100% youth work does work, and these cutbacks, it's terrible. It's going to have an impact of everybody in the whole district, and especially the rural councillors too, because there is the cutbacks on that side on the rural. And the one that really hits me, you all know I'm a youth worker myself, and it's intervention money. And it's something when we go through very difficult times, especially in interface areas, this money is crucial, and that's all been cut back now. So we have severe problems coming this summer. Last week we had a young mower from the Cathedral Youth Club, Tammy, was on the Nolan show, more or less fighting the cause here on these cutbacks, and the impact that's having now for all youth organisations throughout the summer programmes. It's going to be terrible, and you know, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. These youth centres constantly applying for funding and getting that back now. And the main roads from EA and the DE, and there's nothing coming through them, which is going to be causing jobs throughout the youth sector too. But they are crucial in the communities, and they are crucial for the young people, for the support out there. And I welcome this motion coming in today by Councillor Tierney, and I look forward with Youth Work Alliance coming forward to speaking out the real concerns here, which is going to affect all of us and everybody, every parent out there who sends young people to your clubs throughout the district. But thank you. I fully support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mark, or Alderman Mark. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks very much, Councillor Tierney, for bringing this motion. Within the council area, we are seeing a rise in antisocial behaviour involving our youth. This is when we need the resources to help the EA and our community worker, youth workers, to tackle the problem of antisocial behaviour. And we will fully support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Tierney for bringing the motion. I suppose it takes me back in time to 50 years ago when I was first asked to become a youth club leader in Castlereagh, and it was via my teaching that I got involved in the youth work, and further involvement in youth sport bodies, youth uniformed organisations, etc. And From that background, it's very easy to empathise with the entirety of this particular motion. What community and voluntary folk do for youth people cannot be underestimated in any way, and to reduce the availability and by any means of access for our young people, whether it be urban or rural or whatever, is absolutely scandalous. And one thing that I totally support the motion, but there is one line in that, Councillor Turney, that I also appreciate, and it's that the Alliance would be called to a special meeting of council and not fired in along with committee business or whatever. And I believe that all calls for representation to this council should be dealt with in that way, rather than just, putting you into a committee meeting here and there. And I've said that before, and I know there's a motion later on. I hope perhaps that can be taken on board there, that bring it to a special council meeting. Don't try and push it aside into some committee or whatever. But we'll be supporting the motion, and thank you for Councillor Turney for bringing it. And look forward to hearing the voices of those young people.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in. On behalf of the DEP, we have no problem in supporting the notice of motion coming forward here. I think it's a very, very timely motion in light of the cuts that are coming down the road at us. And I have to say, we do not underestimate the value of that youth provision to our young people out there. And as previous speakers said, we have seen an increase in antisocial behaviour and stuff like that. And these organisation youth groups who have this youth provision can help to take some of those young people off the streets and into good programs and train them up to be leaders in the future. And I have to say, once again, probably the rural community will be impacted most, because at the end of the day, Mayor, even through a rural issues group, it is one thing that we've been calling for is more youth provision within our rural areas. And I think that has been well documented over quite a number of meetings that we've had and even full council meetings. But Mayor, happy to support the notice of motion coming forward here.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor, and people before profit are happy to support the motion. Thanks to Councillor Tierney for bringing it. I think, first of all, just want to say, commend the excellent contribution that youth workers across the city and district provide, and the excellent work that they do in our local communities but most importantly with our young people, as young people really lead in these services. And a lot of the young people who take part in youth work services become excellent youth workers themselves. So it's a brilliant model, and it's essential that it's properly supported and properly funded. But unfortunately, this service, it's an essential service as far as I see, is another casualty of austerity. And it just seems to be that every valuable community service at the moment is at risk, particularly those services that are working on the ground and that are working with the most vulnerable in our society. And the government, in reality, is trying to squeeze public services and community and voluntary sector services at a time when they should actually be given more funding, because there's more need in society. And the consequences of this is that people suffer, and they suffer people are suffering like never before. And I think it's really important within this motion that we hear directly from the Youth Work Alliance on the real life consequences of what these cuts will mean. And this youth work campaign to save the funding for youth work needs to be part of a broad campaign against austerity and against cuts, but most importantly for the type of society that people really deserve. We haven't fought this much to be accepting cuts like this, so this campaign needs to be part of the fight back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. No further speakers. Just before I go back to yourself, Councillor Tierney, to sum up, I would want to declare an interest. My own daughter works within community youth services in our local area. And just to concur with all the speakers in terms of the work that the youth service does. It can't be overstated, the impact that it has on the ground, training and education of young people. And Councillor Neil is right. A lot of the young people who come through youth services then go on to work within the youth services because they see the value that it brings and the opportunities, and then wish to give back to their local community. So I do work really closely with all the youth services within Ballyarnett and across the town, and it would be a damn shame to see any diminishment of the services. So, sorry, Councillor Tierney, back to yourself.
No, Mayor, thank you. And there's quite a lot that has been said there, and I thank each and every speaker who has indicated support. It looks and sounds at the minute as if it's going to go through unanimous, which is great, and will give, hopefully, a boost to the community and voluntary sector organisations, but to youth workers across the district. I too have met with Youth Work Alliance on a number of occasions, and it was working with them where the wording of the motion actually came up, and the idea and the suggestion around bringing Youth Work Alliance into a special meeting of council. I felt was important. I thought it was important that it was a special meeting, and I agree with Alderman Hussey. It's too important an issue to be put on a committee, and I think every councillor needs the opportunity to hear it. I agree a lot of what people were talking around, where youth workers help with particular issues, particularly around antisocial behaviour. And anyone who's been out at those particular issues, sometimes the police can make those situations a lot worse, and there is no one else there, only youth workers to try and calm that situation, challenge the behaviour of young people, but do it in a way that they respond to, in a way that I certainly couldn't do it. And it brings calm, it settles down the situation, and it's vital within our communities. I was in the Bonfire Working Group from the very start, and one of the first groups of people that we wanted to speak to was youth workers, to find out how we could work with them to try and support young people through that difficult time. So their role can't be understated at all, and I know that that's been said a number of times. Alderman Devaney said there needs to be more provision in the rural area, which I'm sure he's right. There needs to be more provision across this district, in my opinion. Yes, maybe we do start with a rural area, but we don't have enough in Ballyarnett. I'm sure every other DEA could say the same. Councillor O'Neill made a very important point, which I totally agree with, that every valuable community service is at risk, and we need more funding. That is the core of a number of the notice of motions that we have passed in the last couple of months. So look, I have a lot of friends within the community and voluntary sector, youth provision, and who provide youth provision across this district, and I'm sure that once they find out that this motion has gone through this council with full support, that they will understand the support that they have from this council, and hopefully we'll be able to do something to help all of those organisations that are under threat at the minute. And thanks to the members who have supported it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney, and thank you for bringing the motion, and thank you to everybody for their contributions. It looks like another one unanimous, so thank you very much. So next motion is in the names of Councillor Jason Barr and Councillor Edwards. I take it, Councillor Barr, you're taking the lead, and just to confirm that Councillor Edwards is content to second.
Yep, I'll second. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, and I see Councillor McHugh in the chat box, but I'll go to yourself first.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, more than 200,000 journeys are made by rural community transport partnership buses every year across the north. It is massively concerning that this could have no budget beyond April. Many across our council area are living in terror for fear of losing this lifeline service. This will have a devastating impact on jobs, families, the elderly, the disabled, and the most vulnerable within our council area. We as a council need to stand up and protect those who live in our rural communities, as for far too long they are forgotten about and keep having cuts to their local areas and services. This vital service cannot be another loss to those who really need it. My local MLA, Daniel McCrossan, has written a letter along with other elected representatives across Strabane and West Tyrone to show that they care and to show that this funding must be kept. I really hope that you can all support this today and we can put pressure on the department to keep this funding for the people that need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Councillor McHugh, do you wish to come up with an amendment?
Mayor, do I table that amendment now?
Yes, if you're content to, yeah.
Yeah, Mayor, I have already discussed it first of all with the proposers of today's motion, and I've forwarded the amendment to the committee clerk. If she could put it up there. Yeah, Mayor, it's just essentially to add to the motion, and obviously I thank Councillors Edwards and Barr for tabling the motion. Members will see the amendment in front of them there, and on foot of that amendment, I will be withdrawing my own motion on the same issue. You'll be glad to hear.
Councillor McHugh, could we get just a seconder for your amendment? I see Councillor Jackson here in the chamber. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead if you wish to speak to the amendment.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm not going to rehash everything that Councillor Barr has raised there. I just want to make 2 points, Mayor. This issue is a massive issue in the rural area, so it is. We all know how important issues like rural isolation, social isolation, and mental health issues have been discussed in a big way recently. But here we have the potential of a vital service to rural users being cut. At yesterday's rural issues meeting, we listened to a representative from EasyLink, and she was outlining how, you know, this potential cut to this service is probably just it's a drop in the ocean in terms of the whole DFI budget. It's less than 1%, something like 0.5%. But in terms of the detrimental impact it will have on not only the operators themselves, but the service users, that just can't be quantified. Literally, you know, there's community groups in the rural area operating on a shoestring budget, and they're trying to run projects that tackle things that I have mentioned there in terms of rural isolation, depression, loneliness, and they're running these events, and it's the rural transport companies that are, you know, often taking people to those events. And here we have now a potential cut to such a vital service for the rural community, and you know, it can't be allowed to happen, and we have to do everything to ensure that it doesn't happen. Just a final point I'd like to make is that in all my time as a councillor, I have to say this issue is probably the issue that I've been lobbied on the most. So I'd just like to commend the service users of the rural transport for the lobbying that they've done, because quite clearly they've taken councillors and other elected reps to task on it, and ensured that you know, this is being raised as it has been raised here today. So I thank the movers of the main motion, and thank them for accepting my amendment, and obviously Sinn Féin are supporting it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McHugh. Councillor Raymond Barr, you content to speak on the amendment as well as the motion?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I think everyone wanted to submit a motion on this issue, such was the anger at this announcement. DFI are on the record as saying that this is a discretionary service, but that couldn't be further from the truth. This is an essential service. It's a lifeline to the vulnerable and the elderly and the rural communities. And I think this council must do everything in its power to ensure this service is maintained for the benefit of those people. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman McMorris.
Thanks, Mayor. I had also put in an email to the committee there. Basically, I was looking to make another amendment to the original proposal. We're happy to accept.
Alderman McMorris, do you want me to come back to you then when we deal with this amendment?
Could you please?
Yeah, no problem at all. Councillor Edwards.
Apologies, Mayor, I couldn't find my mute button there, Mayor. Mayor, just wanted to add in there, and I completely concur with everything my colleague Jason Barr has mentioned in moving the motion, but we have a young man that works in the office with us in Strabane, and I promised him I would raise his case at tonight's meeting. He lives in Plumbridge and he's got learning difficulties, and he uses his service on a daily basis from Plumbridge and the Strabane, and he comes in and he volunteers in our office. And with this service removed, there's no direct bus from Plumbridge into Strabane, and he has to go Plumbridge to Oma to Strabane, and he's really, really frustrated with it. And I wanted to put that in record, just that, you know, it's those people, it's those human life stories. And like Councillor McHugh mentioned there, I've been lobbied by many service users. It's a fantastic local service, especially for the rural areas. But there's so many human stories out there on the impact that these cuts would have, and it's an absolute shame that it's got to this far with proposed cuts. It's an absolute shame. It's a direct attack on our rural areas and some of the most vulnerable and isolated people across our council area. But I just want to add that in there, and obviously fully supportive of the motion. And I thank Councillor Jason Barr for moving it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Ferguson, you're happy to speak on the amendment as well? Yep.
Yep, absolutely, Mayor, and thank you to the proposers of the motion. Mayor, I think this just highlights the lack of transport that we have within our rural areas. People do depend on a lot of these different companies. I know that we have EasyLink actually named in this, but there's a number of other services that are out there too that help in our rural areas. And it's not just about the transport, Mayor. We see that TransLink are funded through DFI, and we don't get enough buses within our rural villages for people to use it to go to work or go to services or go to the GP practices. But it's also the fact that we don't have enough accessible taxis. So when we lose these services like EasyLink, you're going to have a number of people who won't be able to go to simple things like the pharmacy. They have accessible buses. It's part of their life. It's part of their whole support network. It's such an important services, especially to our rural villages. And I think it is dire that, you know, DFI haven't come forward and confirmed that this funding is available for them. Mayor, we fully support this motion, and I think it just highlights how important it is, because it's actually on our pack 3 times in different ways. You know, that rural villages and rural residents really need these services, and it's about time that we get confirmation that these services will stay. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Harkin on both.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we support the motion 100%, and we think that the loss of these services to rural areas, EasyLink and other services, will be catastrophic for people who depend on them. And as we know, rural areas will be disproportionately impacted by austerity, and that is what's happening. And I think we as a council have to do everything we can to push back on this and to demand better for people. It is the case that, you know, as was predicted a number of years ago, austerity is now the political choice. And I think that the only option is to have all-out resistance to austerity, whether it is from this council, whether it is from Stormont departments, or whether it is the Tories, because, you know, this motion from the council will give people a sense of hope that they have the backing of the council, but it's going to take a people power movement, in our opinion, right across the north, that is linked up with people across the water, and indeed with people right across the south. We are in an era now of where people can read the newspaper every day of the week and see big corporations making record profits, and yet government is telling us that these cuts are necessary. This is just, it's not true. It's not true that there's no money, but we have to get everybody pointed in the same direction, and everybody saying resistance is the only way forward. We are not going to implement Tory austerity in any form. And I think that has to be, that is going to be people before profits message, and we have to take this to the streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. No further speakers at this point. So I'm going to say that the amendment is passed unanimously and now becomes the substantive motion. So I'm going to return to Alderman McMorris for further amendment.
Thanks, Mayor, and appreciation for the councillors for bringing this motion forward. I'm sure everybody's in the same boat, that we've been lobbied hard from the service users in regards to this. Certainly in this meeting today, when we've talked about disparity in rural services, this just heightens the disparity within the rural services. I have sent in just a slight amendment to the proposal, Mayor, And basically, because the proposal referenced EasyLink solely, I know there's other services out there who also have been impacted with the cuts to the rural transport services. But I would like to just add in, just change a few wording, basically just to take out EasyLink and to insert community transport and shop mobility services, because they've also been impacted. We do realise as a party, you know, the benefit of rural transport and how it impacts on mental health and loneliness for people to be able to get out of their homes who wouldn't have the opportunity without these services. So I just want to recognise that the work that they do, and I have family members who use the services, so I know the vitalness of it. And again, I just want to say we'll fully support the motion, but I would just like them few amendments to the original motion. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Alderman McMorris. We're just waiting to see them on the screen, but I need a seconder for them as well.
Mayor, I'll second.
So I don't know who spoke there.
I'll second.
Sorry. I know you were trying to, but Councillor Ferguson got in. Okay. Okay, so they're proposed and seconded. Alderman Hussey, do you want to speak on it?
Thank you, Mayor. And can you take it that I'm not withdrawing my motion, but my motion has now been subsumed by the composite motion that we have, and I welcome that. Very much welcome that. I suppose the motion talks about being concerned. I'm sure that the word concerned probably undervalues how we all feel. I think there's a high level of dismay. And going back to Councillor Neil earlier on in the previous motion, talked about that every valuable community service is at risk. And here we have another example of it. Clearly, the increasingly chaotic budgetary position facing our Stormont departments now risk the scrapping of a vital transport service for our community, with DFI initiatives providing support for accessible transport having no guarantee of future funding. No one in Northern Ireland should be discriminated against in accessing suitable public transport. However, for some of our fellow citizens, whether because of age, rural isolation or disability, accessing the routine public transport network is not always possible. That is why DFI schemes that target these difficulties, and I'm pleased that the last amendment broadened the remit of the motion, because we're talking about the Rural Transport Service, the Disability Action Transport Scheme, and indeed Shop Mobility are all vitally essential services. Thousands of folk every week, especially among our rural or elderly or disabled population, rely on the range of specialist DFI transport schemes being available. It's shameful that the inability to sort out locally multi-year departmental budgets is now impacting on some of our most vulnerable citizens. I know that party colleague Robbie Butler, MLA, has been engaging with the DFI Permanent Secretary. And I have to be fair and say that the Permanent Secretary has shown willing, together with her team, to meet, and we believe that there is a genuine commitment to still do everything in their powers to try and secure funding and to provide clarity going forward. And a welcome element of this motion is that this is giving further ammunition to the Permanent Secretary to argue the case for all of the services that are under threat. Supporting the motion and all amendments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Hultain. I give you a bit of leeway there because I know that you were speaking to your own motion as well. Okay. No further speakers. Nobody speaking against the amendment, so I'm going to assume that that amendment is also passed and becomes part of the substantive motion. I am going to return to Councillor Barr to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to everyone that took the time to speak, and happy enough with all the amendments that come forward there. I'm sure that it strengthens the the motion up. So, look, it's great to see a united voice on this, and hopefully that the Permanent Secretary can listen to our united concerns on this, and hopefully deliver this vital funding back to where it rightly belongs, to serving the people of our rural communities. So, thanks for all support, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barr, and thank you everyone that contributed. Nobody has spoke against. Everybody seems to be in favour, so happy to say that is also passed unanimously. I'm going to move now to Councillor Doyle's motion, and I see in the chat box that Councillor Cusack wishes to second the motion. So, Councillor Cusack, could you just confirm that?
Yes, thanks, Sandra.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Doyle, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. The school holiday food payment scheme provides £2.70 per child per day for schools for food during school holidays. 8,793 children in Foyle alone are eligible for it. Around 100,000 across the north. It's of immense help to families who would otherwise be struggling to provide extra meals. It was extended by the then Education Minister in October last year until tomorrow. So MLAs did know that this scheme was coming to an end, and I'm sure many of colleagues across the chamber here will have been informed by constituents as parents were told today that the scheme would end. The problem, of course, is not of any of our households making, but of Tory austerity. These same households have been hit time and time again with energy price rises, rent, food and rates. I'm under no illusion, and we should be under no illusion in this council, that we will have parents skipping meals in this city and district in order to feed their children over holiday time at school. The protection that is supposed to be there for families who are under pressure is being systematically stripped out while the DUP sit at home. We have to all work together in this chamber to address this very, very worrying development. Whilst this could be put down to bean counting in the Department for Education, it is also the responsibility for the NIO to step in, because ultimately what we will end up seeing is children going hungry in this district in 2023. I want to say to the DUP, get back to work, because if you don't soon, there isn't going to be much more of a modern society left for you to try and govern. Because once you take away someone's means to feed themselves and their families, what else is there to take? We should be sending a very strong message from this chamber today that this scheme has to be reinstated. We will not have children and indeed their parents going hungry in this city because of decisions not of their making. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor. People Before Profit are, of course, in full support of this motion. It's an absolute disgraceful decision from the Department for Education, and particularly days before the Easter break, which is going to cause serious stress for parents. They have no idea that parents actually budget week to week, month to month, and haven't prepared for this here loss of free school meals over the Easter break. And it's absolutely indefensible during a cost of living crisis. We know that the Tories could have stepped down multiple times, even though we have a lack of government here. But they clearly don't care about young people going hungry, or have no concept of the fact that people could go hungry because they can't afford their food. But Councillor Doyle mentioned about the DUP recklessly holding up Stormont, who could actually take action on this. But the DUP have showed their track record on free school meals for young people, as they voted against free school meals in Westminster not too long ago. This crisis in our education system is a long time coming, and as I mentioned before, like so many of our public services, education has been systematically underfunded by successive Stormont administrations. like the money is always there for war. The money's always there to chase a corporate agenda. But when it comes to teachers' pay or now for supporting deprived young people, the pockets are empty. So at a time of crisis, we have to ask ourselves, again, I've said it already, why is it those who are most in need who are always targeted first? That's where the cuts always come first, is to the most vulnerable in our society. And, you know, this motion should give confidence to people in our community at large to actually bring about a mass protest at the doors of the Department of Education, where we need families, we need young people and teachers all demanding with one voice that not to cut holiday hunger payments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil, and apologies, Councillor Cusack. I only read the first bit where you said you were going to second, so apologies. If you wish to speak now.
No problem, Mayor. Thank you. And thanks for Councillor Doyle for bringing this motion forward. The SDLP are fully in support of extending the works which have previously been done by all parties to secure these essential grants during the past couple of years. And we want them to continue to be available for everyone in need. And I don't think I need to reiterate how important these financial lifelines are to struggling families, and everyone should know the vital importance of a nutritious and balanced diet for the healthy physical and mental development of all children and young people. Mayor, my party colleague Mark H. Durkin was one of the first proponents of the school meal payment, and it is a key ask in our SDLP cost of living action plan. However, today, Mayor, as Councillor Doyle has said, the SDLP has sight of communication from the Education Authority confirming that the school holiday foods grant will not be payable for the Easter 2023 and subsequent holiday periods for 23-24, which is so disappointing and an absolute disgrace. They went on to quote that previous monies ring-fenced in 2022 by the then executive, an executive we no longer have, thanks to the DUP, have ended. So to keep it short, I don't want to reiterate everything that people are going to say. I just want to say that I would like to remind our citizens of how frustrating it is that yet again, here we are as local councillors without the powers or mandate of MLAs to take the necessary legislative steps to make this happen. And most of all the other issues we're going to debate today or have debated today happen. And this is all because the socially regressive DUP, and only the DUP, continues to put their party politics before the provision of food, health and well-being of all our communities, and people's poverty behind their pride. Call it DUP passion, whatever you want, but I call it accountability. And Mayor, we are not all the same. No matter what they're saying out there, when every politician is the same, we are not all the same. The responsibility for this lies firmly with the DUP, and I want that message to go out loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Councillor McGowan.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing me in. Today's announcement of the brutal cuts to the school Easter holiday will impact over 100,000 children. I think it's been said by most of the speakers before. For a family of 3 children in this district, it works out at a loss of £40 a week over Easter. But it's a thought that, you know, the DUP are dilly-dallying around, and if this continues on through the summer, it's a huge loss to families that really rely on this money over the holidays to feed kids that are no longer at school. So I really don't know how the DUP is going to knock doors and look under the face of some people and answer the question when asked, why is this being cut and what have you done to rescind that cut? It's a very sad day for families throughout this district and throughout the north. And like the previous speakers, it's about the time the DUP got back into government and started thinking about people instead of themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in. And the DUP has no problem in supporting the notice of motion coming forward here today. And I just want to put on record that our education spokesperson, Diane Dodds, has expressed concern and around the discontinuation of the food grant. And, you know, at the end of the day, when we look at the amount of money to deliver this programme, it's a very, very small amount on the overall budget of the Education Authority. And the need that's out there, we think it's vital that be restored again. And really, at the end of the day, Madam Mayor, these responsibilities move over to the part of the Northern decisions for the Northern Ireland office to make. And we will be ensuring that our voice is heard in there and around that. And at the end of the day, I think, Mayor, we're DEP, but a DEP bashing again today. But at the end of the day, Madam Mayor, you've been here long enough. These issues and around funding and around education, health, and many other issues have been there for 15, maybe 2 decades. So it's for to say it has just happened now, I think is quite wrong. But Mayor, we're happy to support the proposal or the recommendation here.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Alliance Party fully support this motion, and she'd like to point out that our MLA Connie Egan brought this to the notice of the Education Authority, which we can't bring it to the Minister, and we all know why.
Short and sweet. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll be supporting the motion. On the way here, I listened to an interview of a local primary school headmaster in the city, and I was really quite disturbed to hear that. It's 25 years since I've been in the classroom, but the job of a principal of a school is education, looking after the teachers' rotas and educational supplies and all the rest of it. But, a principal of a school should not be placed in that sort of scenario. It's disgraceful that the principal has to take on board all of these issues. Those issues shouldn't be there. Other people are saying why that is. I'm not even going to go into that. I think maybe down the line, take that responsibility with school meals, etc., out of EA and move it elsewhere. But let schools teach. And it is despicable that, given this situation, again, students, young people in Northern Ireland are being discriminated against vis-a-vis their counterparts in the rest of the United Kingdom. It's just not on. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. I don't have any further speakers that I can identify. Okay, Councillor Doyle, back to yourself to sum up.
Much appreciated, Mayor, and thanks to all those who spoke and who recognised that this is common sense and not about watching your back, the way that Alderman Devaney normally does, because he talks about the NIO, but Chris Heaton-Harris, Jeffrey Donaldson, or you, Morris, aren't going to go hungry over a school period. It's going to be the people that you're supposed to be there to serve. And it just came to me, just as someone was speaking there, we used to make fun and sing a wee song whenever I was younger. It was Margaret Thatcher, Milk Snatcher. Well, it's obviously now Jeffrey Donaldson, Food Snatcher, that we have to worry about. And if this issue isn't taken seriously, it isn't going to just be people who live in Skeg or in Craigan or the Brandywell whose children are going to suffer. It's going to be the people that the DUP are supposed to be serving as well. How in God's name did we get to this, where something that everyone else has fixed and that you just refuse to acknowledge has got to the stage where we are now going to make children sit at home while their tummies rumble? That's something that I'd love to hear the answer for whenever someone comes to work in the DUP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Another one passed unanimously, so thank you. It's now just gone 4 o'clock, so I'm going to propose that we take a 15-minute central break and back for the past. Thank you. Welcome back. We're back online now. Yeah. Okay, so starting again, and Councillor McHugh has amended the earlier motion, so his motion is now withdrawn. So the next motion is in Councillor Jackson and Councillor Tierney's name. I'm assuming Councillor Jackson, you're taking the lead. Seconded by Councillor Tierney, just to confirm. Okay, over to yourself, Councillor Jackson.
Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Tierney. This motion has come about from discussions we've had collectively with the Bloody Sunday Trust. The Bloody Sunday Trust have joined with the Irish anti-apartheid campaign, which is headed up by Senator Francis Black, and they continue to raise the atrocities that are ongoing in the occupied territories in Palestine. And Mayor, I think it's fitting here at the last meeting of this council mandate that we reaffirm our solidarity with the people of Palestine, which we have done many times before. Apartheid is an institutionalized regime of oppression and domination by one racial group over another. And there's a series of evidence-based reports by Palestinian, Israeli, and international human rights organizations that have left no doubt that apartheid is being practiced by Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory. This territory is occupied by Israel since 1967 and has a discriminatory legal and political system that privileges the 700,000 Israeli settlers living in the 300 illegal Israeli settlements in Eastern Jerusalem and the West Bank. Living in that same geographical space, over 3 million Palestinians are living without rights. They're living under an oppressive rule of institutional discrimination and without a path to genuine Palestinian state that the world has long promised is their right. Mayor, another 2 million Palestinians live in Gaza, which has been regularly described as an open-air prison, without adequate access to power, water, or health, and no ability to freely travel to the rest of Palestine or indeed the rest of the world. The motion highlights that the United Nations General Assembly will officially commemorate Nakba Day on the 15th of May. What we're asking Council to do is to work with the local organisations here in the city. They mark Nakba Day on an annual basis. This is an important step to ensure that the history of Palestine is widely understood. And we've well rehearsed the importance of international solidarity. I would hope that everybody within this chamber endorses the campaign in conjunction with the Bloody Sunday Trust and the Irish anti-apartheid campaign, so that we continue to mark this on an annual basis. Mayor, the media focus in the Ukraine war over the past year has rightly highlighted the huge anger that's out there against foreign oppression and illegal occupation. And that's another reason why we can't forget the injustices that continue to happen in occupied territories in Palestine. So I would hope that everyone within the chamber is able to support this motion and make a commitment to mark Nakba Day and be part of the programming of events that'll be put on by the Bloody Sunday Trust. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, Nakba Day will be marked by the UN General Assembly on May the 15th, and it's a significant step towards correcting a historical wrong. Councillor Jackson, I agree with when he says that it's an important step towards ensuring that the history of Palestine is widely understood, but it's also a significant step to ensure that the rights of the Palestinian people to statehood and self-determination are upheld. I suppose I better declare an interest as a member of the Bloody Sunday Trust, but I was happy to meet with him along with Councillor Jackson and happy to propose this motion. Again, in partnership with Councillor Jackson. I feel it's important that we do mark Nakba Day for all of the reasons that Councillor Jackson has outlined, but it shows our ongoing and continued support to Palestine and its people. I think it's important, particularly from a city like Derry and from the City and District Council, that we send our solidarity as strong as we can to all places that are struggling across the world. I think that's what the marking of this day will do, and I sincerely hope that the Council agree that we mark this on an annual basis. The Bloody Sunday Trust, no doubt, will put on a series of events that will be challenging, that will be educational for people and will be enlightening for people. And I suppose as a member of the Bloody Sunday Trust, you would expect me to say that, but anyone who has followed their events over recent times, I think will agree. I think it is important that we partner with organisations who are trying to shine a light where people don't want that light to be shown. And I think it's important, again, on our last full council meeting before the end of this mandate, that we send our solidarity to the people of Palestine and we join with the Bloody Sunday Trust and the Irish Anti-Apartheid Campaign to do all we can to highlight the injustices which is going on in Palestine. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cheney and Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor. People Before Profit will certainly be supporting this motion today, and we welcome the opportunity to acknowledge the Nakba. We are going to be putting an amendment to it, and I think I just sent that to Teresa. I do want to say, before we talk about our amendment and the full motion, that I think that it is ironic that Sinn Féin and the SDLP are bringing this motion today. Their leaders were in Washington, DC a week and a half ago and were at a gala event or many events with Joe Biden and many other leading American Zionists. Joe Biden and the American government are the biggest sponsor of apartheid Israel. Last year, at the end of last year, they passed yet another budget to arm the apartheid state. 4 billion is what they handed the Israeli apartheid state. They also handed them 122 million to restock their Iron Dome weapons that they used to smash Gaza in 2021. I think rather than passing a motion here in this council, it would have been far better for the leaders of Sinn Féin and the SDLP to try and call Joe Biden to account for his crimes against the Palestinian people, because that's what it is. And that was an opportunity, and that would have made global headlines, and Palestinians would have seen that like nothing else. So we think that we want to add to the motion that our council reiterates its support for the boycott, divestment and sanctions campaign that was initiated by Palestinian civil society. This is a campaign that is effective and it's working because it's making the Israeli state a pariah state. Secondly, we think it's important on the Nakba, which is the Palestinian catastrophe, that we fully support the right of return of all Palestinians who were violently pushed out of historic Palestine in 1948 and thereafter by Israeli violence backed by the United States. And that thirdly, that we as a council back the global day of protest and action that has taken place, and that we back the protest, the march and rally that the Ireland Palestine Solidarity Campaign here in Derry is going to be is organising. So we welcome the opportunity to stand in solidarity with the Palestinians. We think it's absolutely right that we commemorate the Nakba. We hope that this will be a positive motion coming out of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Have you a seconder for your amendment? Councillor O'Neill, thank you. Alderman McMorris, you're next. Do you wish to speak to the amendment and the motion?
Yeah, I want to speak on the original motion.
Sorry, you didn't quite catch that. Are you happy to speak to both?
Yeah, I'll speak to both, no problem.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Mayor, for letting me in. I just want to say that this is simply another attempt to put forward an anti-Israel viewpoint. It is not about attempting to find any kind of solution or peaceful two-state solution in the region. In relation to the occupied territories bill, there is an irony that this motion comes up not long after lots of people have travelled to the United States for St. Patrick's Day. Did they discuss this bill with many of the US senators and other politicians who they met there? It is interesting how these anti-Israel sentiments aren't highlighted when they're visiting the United States. It might also be interesting for them to explain their support to some of the major US companies who have an Irish division or subsidiary. They would be in breach of the law if they do business in contravention of this bill should it become law. However, should they comply with this bill, they would be violating nearly 24 US state laws which prohibit unauthorised boycotts against Israel. If people want to discourage major companies from locating into the Republic of Ireland and doing business there, that is a matter for them. We, of course, would be happy to welcome those companies to relocate here in Northern Ireland. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Morris. Councillor Donnelly.
Chair. The statement from the previous speaker isn't surprising, given that there was a lot of connections between this country and Israel. Both the states of Israel and what people would term Northern Ireland are illegitimate, and they're both counter-democratic. One is a Zionist state. It was initially built as a Protestant state, both built at the expense of Indigenous peoples and maintained by discrimination and violence. The British governor described the state of Israel as little loyal Jewish Ulster in the Middle East, and that there's numerous connections. We have Arthur James Balfour, whose connections to both areas. The main catalyst of Nakba, which the ethnic cleansing of Palestine and ongoing conflict, was Chief Secretary to Ireland in 1887. The 1891 war is a repression against the Land League and boycott campaigns against landlords, many of them absentee, and stolen land led to deaths and hundreds of people being imprisoned, including 20 MPs. Balfour was instrumental in facilitating English foreigners with no claims to either territories in violating their sovereignty. The nefarious Black and Tans, 10,000 of whom meted out notorious brutality and indiscriminate violence and death, were used both in Ireland and in Palestine. This council has a boycott. Its corporate position is to support BDS. Boycott comes from Charles Cunningham, English land agent, rent collector for absentee English landlords. He was ostracised by the local community in Ireland for evictions in Nuluman and Gortamore. Local shops refused to serve him, labourers refused to work the land. So there is a strong BDS, a boycott history in Ireland. That law, including this council, which has adopted as a corporate position, is a non-violent resistance, and Irish people were instrumental in breaking the apartheid system in South Africa when Dunnes Stores workers refused to handle South African produce. The actions of people in this city against Raytheon. So we do have a proud tradition, and we need to redouble our efforts, as international solidarity is very important. We need to keep the pressure up and to restore sovereign integrity in both countries.
Thank you. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for letting us in. I just want to bring a point up. I'm not too sure if the previous alderman that spoke there actually understands the actual division of Palestine's rights of the Secretariat, which is written down by the United Nations. It states there that of international law and United Nations resolutions and the efforts being exerted in the regard and generated international support for the rights of Palestinian people and the achievements without delay an end to Israeli occupation, which began in 1967, and of the two-state solution is the basis of the pre-1967 borders with an independent sovereign state and viable state for Palestine living side by side in the peace and security of Israel. Now, we know that DUP support Israel, but can I just tell you, Israel was born out of terrorism. In 1944, the Stern Gang murdered Lord Moy, a British minister, was murdered in Cairo. 750 British police and army murdered by Israeli terrorists. Menachem Begin ended up as the Prime Minister of Israel. So I just do not understand you. But there again, you know, you're objecting to this and it talks about peace. But there again, you also objected to the Good Friday Agreement. So what do we expect from you? And I'm an ex-soldier, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKinney. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. Initially, I'm seeking some clarification from the proposer and seconder of the motion. The one action in there directly relative to this council is the third paragraph. That council resolves therefore to formally mark Nakba Day in line with the US resolution through an appropriate programme of local events. Can somebody tell me what these local events are? And in partnership with relevant organisations. Now, I understand that day is the 15th of May, according to the first paragraph. And I'm mindful of requests that were in this chamber yesterday where we were told you're past your sell-by date, blah, blah, blah. So I'm wondering what sort of programme of local events and which organisations are we talking about here? What are the implications for council on that? And a final, by the way, I'll be abstaining on this particular motion on the following basis. The final sentence concludes with contribute towards the building of peace. Perhaps there are those who could also contribute to the building of peace by stopping the firing of rockets on Israeli citizens. So, you know, there's both sides to the story, and on that basis, this to me is one-sided, and I can't support it, but I will not vote against it. I will be inclined to abstain, given the situation that faces there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for allowing me in. And I know Nairi has already spoken on behalf of the party, but again, to be fair, Alderman Hussey has touched on the point. It's that third paragraph there in regards to, you know, the appropriate programme of local events. And again, is that putting a financial burden on council? And Alderman Hussey has related it. You know, there's no money for a coronation, but is there going to be money pumped into something else when we're told that the funds are all tied in? So clarification on that. But Mayor, as it states, the DP will be against this motion. It has been stated it's been passed in the UN, but again, that was 90 votes to 30 votes. There were 47 abstentions, so it didn't get. It had majority support, but it didn't have an overall support on that. And many of what we would classify as the large nations, which we would be supportive of, Australia, Austria, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Hungary, Italy, the Netherlands, UK, the US, all voted against it. And again, has been reiterated by others. You know, did any of these parties raise this issue when they were over in America for St. Patrick's Day? And if any of these parties do get to speak to President Biden when he comes, are they going to raise it then? I would say they'll be very, very quiet in this issue. But no, just letting you know, Mayor, we're against this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's just important to say again that Israel is a nuclear armed state which is backed up by the biggest military forces on this planet. And the root of this conflict here is Palestinians being driven off their land, being brutalised, being criminalised and being murdered. And I think it's significant to say that today is actually Palestinian Land Day. And the first Palestinian Land Day was in 1976, which saw Israeli military forces shoot and kill 6 Palestinian innocent citizens of Israel who were among thousands protesting the Israeli government's expropriation of 2,000 hectares of land, which had a majority of Palestinian residents. And today, as Palestinian Land Day, marked the first act of collective civil disobedience by Palestinian citizens of Israel against the racist colonisation and dispossession of the Palestinians of their lands and rights since the creation of the state in 1948. And it simultaneously signalled the failure of Israel to subjugate those Palestinians who managed to remain in their homeland after over 750,000 of them were ethnically cleansed during the Nakba.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. And Councillor Jackson on the amendment.
Yeah, no, I indicated to come in on the amendment and say that our party supports. We intend to support the amendment as it is. I know we proposed the BDS motion within council, and I suppose that the Occupied Territories Bill is another way to reinforce and they have that legislative framework. They fulfil and it complements the BDS campaign. Just picking up on Alderman Hussey's point, and I'm curious because in one sense there was a question asked there, and then before receiving an answer, there's an indication that he's not willing to listen. They're abstaining anyway. So, just for his benefit, the programming of events that the Bloody Sunday Trust intend to roll out includes film screenings, talks, music and readings with a focus on 3 themes. The themes are changing the narrative, voices for Palestine, and acting to end apartheid. And what we're asking for now is for council to work with the relative organisations and all interested organisations within our city and district. They work on rolling out that programme of events. We understand that there isn't the financial ask within this. We're asking council to work with our organisations and make a commitment to mark Nakba Day on an annual basis. And I'll address the DUP's comments when I'm given the opportunity to sum up. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney on the amendment.
Mayor, just to say that we're happy to support the amendment. I said whenever I was speaking initially that this motion and the marking of Nakba Day was to try and shine a light in places where people don't want it shown, and whatever events can take place across this district to try and do that, then we're happy to support. Councillor Jackson has already outlined what the Bloody Sunday Trust intend to do and what we would hope council can support them in doing. It was referenced, I think it was Alderman Hussey who referenced the coronation and that type of stuff, that there was no money for that, but there seems to be money for this. I'll remind them that yesterday we agreed support in kind for organisations who want to support or take part in coronation events or organise coronation events. This is pretty similar, so there should be there's no real difference here. We're not asking for something for one section of the community that we possibly denied yesterday. It's the exact same thing as they work with organisations who intend to do that. Similarly, what we had decided at the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee meeting earlier in the month was that council officers would work with organisations who wish to acknowledge the coronation. So I think that reference is pretty null and void in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alderman Devery.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in. And I know my previous 2 colleagues have spoken here, but I have heard mention of ethnic cleansing. And I have to say, I don't hear anyone mentioning the ethnic cleansing of the West Bank when the exodus of the Unionist community with 20,000 people leaving that area, and the ethnic cleansing of the Northern Ireland side of the border, where Unionists were bombed out, shot out of their farms across that border. But, what I would like to hear is, if these events are going, while we are not supporting them, will there be any mention of those exit or those ethnic cleansing issues that took place here in Londonderry and across the border, and especially in around that Castleberg area? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. No further speakers on the amendment. Chief Executive, I think we need to just take it through a formal vote.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members.
This is the amendment, yeah.
Alderman Devaney.
Against.
I'm just checking to make sure some of the members that previously weren't here are still not here. Alderman Guy. Alderman Hussey.
The amendment against.
Alderman Carrigan.
Against, John.
Alderman McCready. Alderman McMorris.
Against, John.
Alderman Work. Councillor Jason Barr.
Or.
Councillor Raymond Barr. Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Michaela Boyle.
For, John.
Councillor Carr. Councillor Cusack.
For.
Councillor Dobbins not with us. Councillor Donnelly's not with us.
He's there.
He's there. Okay. Sorry. Wipe these. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Doyle. Councillor Alex Duffy.
For.
Councillor Sandra Duffy.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For, John.
Councillor Farrell.
For.
Councillor Ferguson.
For.
Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Kelly.
For.
Councillor Logue. Councillor McGinley. Councillor McGowan. Councillor McGuire. Councillor McHugh.
For.
Councillor McKinney.
For.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Riley.
For.
Councillor Stephen Barr. Councillor Tierney. Thank you, members. Mayor, I've recorded 28 for and 5 against, so the amendment is passed.
Thank you. So the amendment now becomes a substantive motion. No further speakers on it. So I'm going to return to Councillor Jackson to sum up.
Okay, thanks, Mayor, and I'll appreciate everyone who spoke in favour and voted in favour of the amendment, and hopefully we'll stay on the same vein and support the motion. It isn't surprising that it's not unanimous. Would have liked it to have been, but we have seen in the past, and the DUP in this meeting have actually found their voice. They're incredibly silent on issues that had been that are directly facing people in the city and district right at this minute in time. But it's not surprising. The surprising element of it is that they don't understand democracy. For a name or for a party that has democratic in their name, they seem to have a very warped view of democracy. But the rest of us, thankfully, understand, and there's a degree of compassion, because see, when you think back and remind ourselves of the ethnic cleansing that has taken place in Palestine, it was ethnic cleansing of over 530 Palestinian towns and villages, and the expulsion of over 750,000 people from their homes. And we can't allow that to be consigned to the history books. It was really referenced earlier, the international solidarity, and I think it was Councillor Donnelly referenced the campaign against Dunn Store stocking apartheid South Africa goods. And that campaign was headed up by Mary Manning And Mary Manning is an integral part of the anti-apartheid, Irish anti-apartheid campaign. And that's that same vein, that same focus on keeping pressure on oppressive regimes that are ignoring and denying people basic human rights. And regardless of how the DUP feel about the rights of individuals right across the world, we won't detract from our campaign and our focus on addressing inequalities, addressing the vile acts that are taking place, whether it's in Ukraine or Palestine or anywhere else in the world. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank everybody who spoke in favour of the motion, and hopefully it can be passed today at this council. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. And could I just ask, does anybody intend to change how they voted? Okay, we have to take through the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Devaney.
Against, John?
Alderman Hussey.
Abstain.
Alderman Carrigan.
Against, John?
Alderman McMorris.
Against, John.
Alderman Work. Councillor Jason Barr. Councillor Raymond Barr. Is Councillor Boyle there? Councillor Michaela Boyle.
Or John.
Councillor Carr. Councillor Cusick.
Or.
Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Doyle. Councillor Alex Duffy.
Or.
Councillor Sandra Duffy.
Or.
Councillor Edwards.
Or John.
Councillor Farrell.
Or.
Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney.
Or.
Councillor Jackson. Councillor Kelly.
Or.
Councillor Logue. Councillor McGinley. Councillor McGowan. Councillor McGowan. Councillor McGuire. Councillor McHugh.
Sorry, John, for.
Councillor McKinney. Is that John?
Yeah.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Riley.
Or.
Councillor Senior Barr.
Or.
Councillor Tierney. Thank you, members. 28 and 3 and 2. Mayor recorded 28 for, 3 against and 2 abstentions. So the substantive motion passes.
Thank you. So the motion in the name of Councillors Jackson and Tierney has passed. So thank you. Moving on. Next motion, Alderman Hussey, yours has been subsumed into another motion, so we're content to move on. So Councillor McGinley.
Mayor, I'll take the motion as read.
Yeah, can I get a seconder? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. So earlier this year, the Western Trust announced its plans to close the Avoca Lodge and to move the service and staff to other facilities. And they did so stating that this closure was not deemed to be major or controversial. For those that reside in Avoca Lodge and indeed their families, this statement couldn't be further from the truth, as the closure is both major and controversial for them. My party colleagues, Padraig Delargy and Ciara Ferguson MLA, have been liaising with the families affected and the Western Trust on this issue for months, and Padraig has described the decision to close the facility as a hammer blow to the service users, and I agree entirely with him. Our city and district is currently suffering with a mental health crisis, and we're seeking further investment in mental health services and supports for people who are suffering with mental ill health. We need more mental health provision, not less. Avoca Lodge provides supported living for people who suffer from mental illness and provides wraparound specialist care and support for these individuals. We can all accept that at times there is a need for a reform of services to raise standards and everything that comes with that. However, when those types of changes are being made, they should be done with a very clear plan of next steps and what it means for the patients and their families, and with a guarantee that those patients will be supported in a way that meets their assessed need. I and indeed Sinn Féin have serious concerns at this stage that there is no clear plan that's been put in place to lay out the next steps, and for this reason, the decision taken to close Avoca Lodge is wrong. It's still unclear where the people who have been residing at Avoca Lodge will be relocated and what level of support they will receive if the supported living model is stood down, as has been announced. The families affected are unsure and are seriously concerned about what this decision means for their family members. And I don't believe that there's been enough consultation on the impact of this decision. So in that vein, I would urge all members to support this motion and to send a clear and concise message to the Western Trust that the decision to close Avoca Lodge is wrong and needs to be overturned immediately.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor McGinley for bringing this motion forward. Mayor, I think she's laid it out very simply that the mental health services that we have within the city and district are stretched at best. We are crying out for more beds, more facilities, and Avoca Lodge gives 10 beds to service users within Grantia and offers that mental health support. I again agree that I have no issue with reform or looking at a review of our services, but that needs to come with a clear plan of where each individual person that is in that facility is going and what service that they're going to get after it closes. I think this is a mistake in the part of the Western Trust to do this without any consultation or a clear plan. I think it does need to be revised, and if down the line they want to look at a new facility, then I don't see why this current facility couldn't be built on and extended. So, Mayor, we are more than happy in Alliance to support this motion and thank Councillor McGinley for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor McGinley for bringing this forward. I have to say, whenever I read the piece from Emma in the Derry News, the first thing jumped into my head was, I am not surprised. The Western Trust seem to have an awful track record when it comes to the long-term care of people with mental health conditions, and that's from people who need medication right up to people who need that residential care that's provided in the Avoca Lodge. And I'd been aware of the plans for the Trust. I have to say that it's almost identical to the plans that were discussed a number of years ago when it came to developing Grangewood. It's a matter simply of we've made a decision, that's the end of it, and with no prior planning in place for where people would receive care in the future. I think we're to send a strong message from this council today that not only is that unacceptable, and not only will this council not look away just because it is only a small facility, but the Trust need to be held accountable for their ongoing mismanagement when it comes to the long-term care for people in this city and district who have mental health conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Neil.
Thank you, Mayor, and just a declaration of interest as an employee of the Western Health and Social Care Trust. But yeah, I think this is a really important motion. This is a symptom really of how we treat people with poor mental health. The mental health budget for the North is far too little and the services are far too scarce and not joined up. Yet Avoca Lodge is an example of an excellent service that supports people who struggle with their mental health. It's patient-centred, it's incredibly supportive, and you know the reality is we need more Avoca Lodges, but the rationale is that it's far too expensive. So good care is too expensive to deliver, and that's not good enough. You know, these are people's home, you know, people's homes and living circumstances that we're talking about. And for anybody who has been told your home, you know, for yourself, if you were going to lose your home, that would cause so much uncertainty and so much stress. And to top that off, these are people who are requiring supportive living for their mental health. So it's a completely reckless decision that's going to exacerbate the health conditions of the residents of Avoca Lodge, never mind the workers who are at risk of losing their jobs. And, you know, the Western Health and Social Care Trust should know far better than this. The legacy of how we've treated people with poor mental health is shameful, and we can't continue to do this. So I think it's really important that we're sending this letter, and it's really important that we build this campaign so that Avoca Lodge doesn't close. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing on behalf of the DUP. We have no problem in supporting this notice of motion coming forward here. I'm disappointed to hear about the closure of this lodge, which supports families with mental health issues. And as we have heard across this chamber many times over the last 4 years. We've been calling for more support for those out there with mental health issues, and this is a reduction, and we have no problem in supporting the notice of motion, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mooney.
Chair, thank you, and thank you to Councillor McGinley for bringing the motion. And we will be supporting it for all the reasons offered, given by Councillor McGinley and the other members. But interestingly, when I was sitting here yesterday at full council, there was an email came in from Lorraine Shields, and I just had a look at it, and it was actually an update from the Trust, Reconvened Lodge, and reading through it, there's nearly a page and a half of detail. But one thing that stood out to me was, and it seems to be, if it's an excuse or a reason or one of the reasons for the anticipated closure of this important site for vulnerable residents, it says, whilst offering an excellent level of support and care to its current tenant group, which is described tenants, the building design and amenities fall far short of modern standards, which seems to me, what they're saying is the building's not fit for a purpose. But my call would be, obviously, can you not look at the building and bring up the standard? Keep those tenants, or what they say, referred as tenants, but residents within that facility, because obviously, as members have said here already, we all know that there's a huge mental health crisis within our community, and obviously then the problems associated with it and the funding as well. But could you not look and they actually just recondition the building and bring up the modern standards? Because it's on a site where there is a lot of associated services, and those residents could avail of those services while there. So, yes, Chair, Mayor, we'll be supporting the motion, and thank you, Councillor McGinley.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly.
Chair, after this meeting last night, myself and Councillor Kerr, we probably didn't get home till after 10 because of something that's directly related to this. This is just it's in a mess. The whole system's in a mess. The health system, and including the mental health or mental health aspect of it. I'm aware of cases where people who've been classed as emergencies, and it goes from young people to mature people. A young person being treated in CAMHS or referred to CAMHS, and parents would phone up, and 3 weeks later, they still haven't received a phone call back. And that's an emergency. Somebody's been classed as emergency. And then them weeks, these families are going through hell. Other people with maybe decades history of poor mental health who would have had long-term stays in hospitals are now being pushed out the door on a Friday night and being told that it's behavioural problems. They're ending up in police custody. They're ending up in Altnagelvin. Both of them in accident and emergency. And both of them situations are not conducive with that person having to sit either hours in a cell in a police station or hours in a hospital. There's a feeling that it's so in a bad state that they just push them out the door come a weekend. And these families then are in turmoil, looking at their loved one. I'm no expert in mental health, and a lot of mental health problems are hidden, but there is cases where it's in your face. The actions, the behaviour is in your face, and you don't have to have any type of medical sort of training to realise that when somebody's really, really unwell, it ends up they go into police custody. Something is, there's this very, very serious problem in this city and district, and it needs dealt with. It's my opinion that some people with mental health, that there's better facilities for animals in this town than there is for some people who are suffering severe mental health. And I don't say that to be in any way shocking. It is a genuine belief, and something has to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. No further speakers. Councillor McGinley, back to yourself to sum up.
Mayor, and thank you to everybody that spoke in support of the motion. I just think it is such an important issue that it's important that the council does send a clear, strong whatever way you want to describe it, message to the trust that we're not going to take it, that these families need the support. And in reference to Councillor Donnelly, there needs to be a lot more mental health support across the board. And I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody that we would be saying that. So I'm brief as normal. But thanks everybody for their support on the motion, and I'm glad to hear it's been sort of unanimous across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGinley. Yeah, unanimous support for that, so that's also passed. Next motion is from Councillor Logue. Councillor Logue, do you have a seconder for your motion? Councillor McGinley, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll just take the motion as read. Childcare is a huge issue for workers and families and can act as a barrier to parents going to work or advancing a career, as often childcare costs eats up much of their pay. Childcare costs in the north are completely out of control. For some families who are less likely to meet the criteria for funded childcare, the cost of childcare is equivalent to a second mortgage. The high cost of childcare means that many parents, particularly mothers, can't afford to work or take up training opportunities. Childcare costs should be reduced for all working parents and the cost of childcare made affordable, but this requires proper public investment from the British government. While the British government recent budget does not address the continued financial pressures on our public services, there was additional money announced for childcare, but without an executive, we cannot decide how this can be spent. More needs to be done to cut the cost of childcare and make it affordable for parents and families. Developing a strategy to deliver this is essential and requires additional funding. We need a comprehensive review of childcare provision. We need to introduce a new cross-departmental strategy to address the crippling impact of childcare costs on so many families. Parents and children can't wait. Childcare providers can't wait. We need the executive now. We need ministers in place to work together to deliver better public services, better childcare, and to cut childcare costs for many hard-pressed families. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Logue. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Logue for bringing this motion forward. Mayor, I think everything Councillor Logue is spot on. I think we do need a comprehensive review of childcare. I think the fact that we are looking at the UK and going to have 30 hours and thinking, oh God, that's good. It's not good enough. We have absolutely no childcare strategy here. We have no provision. We need to help the childcare providers build up around us. We also need to look at things like our flexible working so that working for parents is better and there's not as much need on childcare. Childcare is crippling. Childcare ends up usually costing just as much as the mortgage. It ends up with grandparents having a lot of pressure on them to take children on, even if they don't feel up to it. I couldn't agree more. We need an executive now. We are getting this funding through, but we have no strategy, no provision, no way of getting it on the ground. We need a better strategy than just 30 hours when it comes to childcare. This is another thing that we are differentiating from the UK and from England. It's a failure on our government and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Mayor, thank you. Speaking on behalf of the SLP, we're happy to support the motion. I think the lack of affordable and accessible childcare across the north is putting a huge strain on families and is forcing many parents, especially women and mothers, out of the workplace altogether. And across the north, people are spending a huge amount of their monthly income on childcare costs, and I've heard that in the doors recently. People spending extraordinary amounts of money on childcare, and it really needs to be dealt with. People need that money. They need it for the high food, fuel, and energy bills. At the minute, it is completely unsustainable for many families, and we can't continue with the current model, and it doesn't provide much support for parents, and while providers as well are also coming under pressure. At our party conference at the weekend, the SLP were calling for an ambitious and resource childcare strategy to be introduced in a new Stormont, a new Restore Stormont. We also believe that North-South collaboration is very important, especially on early childhood education and care. And we can learn from the South because they've invested €1 billion recently in delivering a significant reduction in childcare fees. We need the same in the North, and no parent should be forced to give up a career that they've invested so much in or be put under significant financial strain due to childcare costs. And it's time that we finally recognise the value of early childhood education and care, both for the child's development as well as the society, and guarantee affordable childcare for all parents. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Logue for bringing this motion. It is a crucial issue, and we welcome the opportunity to discuss it today. And we absolutely agree that there is a crying need for action in this. Childcare, as we know, before the pandemic, before the cost of living crisis, was a huge strain on a lot of families. People simply couldn't afford it. And if you talk to anybody who is paying for childcare, it's nearly a wage going out the door. And there's many who couldn't afford it. And there's huge pressures, as others have said, on grandparents. Now in the cost of living crisis, there's a real danger that childcare providers are going to go out of business because they can't afford the rising costs of energy or electricity, lights, and there's demands as well. Workers, of course, are saying we need paid better. So there needs to be a drastic 360-degree change in the way that childcare is administered and funded, and that will make a huge difference to many people's lives, but especially women's lives, because it has a massive knock-on effect on women who are often the primary parenter, and that will deny people the right to work, and they have fuller lives. And again, look, the DUP now have held down Stormont for over a year because of a so-called difference in treatment of the North with the rest of with Britain. And this is another clear example where it's completely different here from across the water, but the DUP are simply not up in arms about it. They're not up in arms about this. They're not up in arms about the fact that health and social care workers are treated differently. The cynicism at the core of the DUP's, selfish and reckless boycott of Stormont is clear and clear every day, and they're not going back in. They're making it. So what that means is there is a real danger that childcare providers will be out of business in the next year if Stormont's down, and there's a real danger that many people will not be able to afford childcare costs. So we need action, and I think we have to keep the pressure on, and this spotlight will be welcome.
Okay, Alderman McMorris.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in regards to the comments that the last speaker made, I just want to note that the DUP had on their last manifesto that we were championing for 30 free hours for childcare. Can I just say, basically, as a parent myself, I had to pay for child provision while I wanted to work, and I knew the impact of the expensiveness of that provision. It has a great economic impact. The fact that, any mother who has 2+ children, it's probably the biggest expenditure they have within their family. And this is an absolute deterrent in order for them to be able to go out and seek employment and add to society. And as one of the previous speakers also mentioned, the impact that this has on grandparents. When grandparents work all their lives and they try to get a wee bit of enjoyment out of their retirement, they're faced by rearing the children to allow their children to childcare for their children. I really support the fact that we need to have a comprehensive review of the childcare provision. and introduce a strategy for this here. It is something that impacts each and every family across Northern Ireland and beyond. And based on that, we will be supporting this motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor, and we'll be supporting the motion. We're talking about provision that was designed probably in an era of the extended family, and we're now progressively moving towards nuclear families, and therein a strategy is needed to address a societal change and that is impacting on so many families, and particularly the younger members of those families. And I suspect and trust that within overall childcare provision, we're also including access to preschool provision, which similarly causes many concerns. But in support of the motion, and thank Councillor Logue for bringing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Mayor. And Steve, Councillor Edwards has already spoken on our behalf, but just a quick question, I suppose, when Alderman McMorris, apologies, was speaking there, she mentioned the DUP manifesto pledge around childcare. Can I just ask, is that the same manifesto that the DUP have ignored after the results of the election, given their boycott of the Stormont institutions? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. No further speakers, so I'm going to go back to yourself, Councillor Logue, to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'll be very brief, and I want to thank everybody for their support with this motion. I do want to say, however, we can put anything we want on a manifesto, but unless we do something about it and go to work, to action, what's on that manifesto, it's not worth the paper it's written on. And, childcare is a big issue in this area, in the place that we live, and we really need to go to work and do something about it. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, Councillor Logue, and I do believe that was unanimous as well. So thank you and well done. Okay, next motion is from Councillor Harkin and Councillor O'Neill. I'm going to assume Councillor Harkin's going to speak first and Councillor O'Neill seconding. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And can I just say to Councillor Boyle that I'm not employed by Aegis and I'm not employed by the Dairy Call Centre campaign, and I'm not employed by the Dairy Trades Union campaign, nor the TUC or NICTU. I'm doing this because I'm a trade unionist, and I think that workers in dairy and right across the Northwest deserve basic rights, good terms and conditions, and good pay. I want to commend Aegis for initiating the Dairy Call Centre campaign. As we know, there are many people now who are working in call centres in Derry and across the district. Many workers are now dependent on call centres for employment, and that's why it's been termed by some as the new shirt factories. As we know, the shirt factory workers had trade union rights a long time ago. They joined trade unions in huge numbers, and that gave women, particularly women, a lot of collective confidence in this city. It meant that they were able to take collective action, which they often did, over terms and conditions, over sometimes horrendous treatment of individual women in the shirt factories, and it allowed them to make demands for better pay and so on. We believe call centre workers, like all workers, deserve the exact same. And so that's why this initiative is very important. And this initiative is happening, as people know, in the context of a cost of living crisis where workers' pay is collapsing in the face of inflation, and the cost of living pressures on people are not easing. I think everybody knows that whatever has been reported by some energy companies that the price of electricity, the price of gas, the price of everything is still rising and is still unaffordable for the vast majority of people. So this is about, this campaign is about, giving workers in the call centres the opportunity to join trade unions and to gain a collective voice so that they can attempt to improve their pay and improve their collective rights. And that's at the core of this. And I think it's a great campaign and I hope it succeeds. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Heaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in. It's just to say that Sinn Féin will be supporting this motion and thank Councillor Harkin and O'Neill for bringing it. Call centre workers do a very difficult job and are quite usually very relatively low paid. Every worker has a right to be a member of a union if they so wish to be. So we have no difficulty supporting this motion. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in. We will be supporting this motion, but I would like to ask Sean just how our negotiations going between the trade union and the employers. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I'm summing up. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Harkin and O'Neill for bringing this motion. I've been watching online the campaign, and I think it's a very, very good and powerful move, particularly whenever you do consider, if we are considering call centres to be the new shirt factories, I do think it's important that every worker has access to trade union representation. I previously, before coming on the council, worked in a call centre, and at that time, I don't know if it's changed, but at that time it was very much our way or no way, and that's the way it was. There was a call not long then after I came on the council around trade union recognition that unfortunately that campaign didn't really get the legs it seems that this one has, where it seems to have a few different call centres coming together and workers from a few different call centres coming together to lead this one. It was very much a standalone one at that particular time. I think it would have been a lot better for that particular call centre at that time of it and for the workers within it if it had got trade union recognition then rather than having to fight for it now. Call centre workers, and Councillor Heaney touched on it there, and being there do a very difficult job and sometimes get the raft of very frustrated customers. And I'm not joking, whenever I was there, you hang up the phone and within seconds you're back on another call, probably someone even more irate than the last person, and you hang up that call and it's someone else and someone else. It's relentless work, and the wages that they get paid for it aren't enough by any stretch of the imagination. The way that they could, in my opinion, be treated better. There could be allowances for more breaks and things, longer breaks between calls and things like that, which would improve their daily working life. So we fully support the campaign. I look forward to it ticking off. I know it's started, but ticking off properly. So it's something that we can all get behind. There are countless people across this district who either have or continue to work in call centres, and we must be showing our support by supporting them to get trade union recognition within them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like Councillor Tierney. There was a time I worked in a call centre, and when I read the language in the motion referring to shirt factories, I actually thought it was more like battery hens. I have to say that whenever my experience of working in that environment was that it was not just against the backdrop of being against workers' rights, it was downright oppressive. Timing people going to the toilet like you were in primary school, timing down to the very last second, as Brian had said, between calls, which can be very draining. Sometimes most people I think are doing 10, 11 hour shifts. And the environment, and again, I agree with Brian, was our way or no way. We don't like it. There's a big door out there where you go, and no provision whatsoever for engaging with staff in any meaningful way. I don't know what the situation is of late, but certainly from some constituents that contacted me about a year and a half ago, there are some organisations in the city who operate call centres, and it is simply a revolving door. It is, basically one strike and you're out, and there's no give whatsoever in terms of workers' rights. And the only way to address that is by collectivism within the workplace. So Aintree has no problem at all supporting the motion going forward. Thank you.
Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to support the proposal, but would ask Councillor Harkin with regard to the presentation. I hinted at it earlier on. With regard to that presentation, would Councillor Harkin be minded that would be to a special council meeting, maybe bundled with other presentations, as opposed to bringing a presentation into a committee or that nature? In other words, that it would be available to all council members rather than, funneling it through a committee. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Councillor Neil, are you looking to speak on the motion? No. Okay. I have no further speakers, so Councillor Harkin, I'm going to go back to you to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everybody, for getting behind the campaign. I think that the Dairy Call Centre campaign will appreciate it, and I think it's helpful that councillors have spoken about their own personal experience dealing with call centres, because I think that reflects the way the call centres still are. And that's why I think that, gaining a collective voice will be welcomed. I think many workers have wanted a collective voice in the past, but the employers and maybe the political environment made it difficult for them to see that through. I think that those things are changing now. I think people are gaining more confidence, because they can see that if they don't have a collective voice, they have no means to actually say, hey, we need a pay raise. We can't afford to live on what your paying is, and we deserve better terms and conditions. So that's changing. In terms of Councillor McKinney's question about how it's going between the employer, I think that would be for the Aegis representatives to speak to. And I think, look, if any councillor or alderman wants to get in touch for the campaign, they will be more than happy to meet with you and talk about what they're trying to do and how you or your party could back the campaign and encourage people to join. I think that the campaign, as I would imagine most campaigns in response to Alderman Hussey, will be happy to get whatever kind of platform here to come in and tell people about what they're doing and ask for support. So, I think that hopefully this discussion will put a spotlight in the campaign. If people don't know that it's happening, they'll find out about it. I know the campaign's doing great work already in terms of making inroads, but they've a lot of work ahead of them, and a lot of organising and a lot of discussions will need to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. That is another motion that has been passed unanimously. Moving on to the next motion, which is again in both the name of yourself and Councillor O'Neill. And just checking again, is Councillor O'Neill going to take the lead and Councillor Harkin second? Yes, okay, thank you. Over to yourself, Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll take the motion as read. So, as we all know, we're in really unprecedented times, which demands unprecedented action. As many people will know, because I'm sure many people from the council district has been in touch with you, private rents across the private rental sector have been going up, and at the moment we're probably not seeing the worst of this with the impact of the council rate hike and the increased mortgage interest rates. Things are set to get a whole lot worse, and the difficulty is that people have been forced into private rentals because of the social housing crisis that has lacked for decades and inaction and failure to build social and affordable housing. And unfortunately, people in private rentals have limited protections because of the failure of the Private Tenancies Act. And, the DUP have indicated and have made it very clear that they've no intention in returning to Stormont, no matter how bad things get for ordinary people here. So waiting for an executive to handle this crisis and this particular issue really isn't good enough for our residents in this council area who are struggling to pay their bills. And if there is something that we can do about it as a council, then we should try our very best to do something about it. Bristol City Council has set a precedent in doing this, and I'm sure they're not going to be the first council to do it, but they won't be the last council to do it. And I think we should liaise with officers and Bristol City Council to look at how they have successfully implemented this. And I think there's a particular onus on councils here in the north, given the recurrent lack of government that exists, for us to actually have more powers to do things that are going to help the residents that we serve, because I think we're far more in touch with the residents on the ground. So I think this could be a really positive thing that can actually go a long way to help people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Mayor. And I've tabled an amendment to this motion. I've sent it to Teresa.
Seconder for your amendment, Councillor Heaney.
I'll wait till the amendment comes on the screen.
Chair, point of information, clarification, whatever, is if there's landlords in this meeting, should they declare an interest?
I think we have had that similar question before, and I think it's up to individual members whether they decide they need to declare an interest or not. Okay, in terms of the amendment, the red is fine, the addition is fine, but taking out the last paragraph is not, as it's removing a significant action from the actual motion.
Oh, thanks for that. And based on that advice, I'm content to withdraw that element of the amendment.
Are you leaving the red? Yeah, you leave the red and leave the black that we have scored out. Okay, last paragraph. Okay, go ahead.
Well, thanks for that. And I suppose just in relation to the last paragraph, and we believe that the function and the responsibility lies with the department, and we've had conversations before, and we've had concerns raised by this council around liabilities that fall to other departments, government departments, that this council is picking up the responsibility for. And we believe firmly that ensuring that rents are an affordable and a fair price, that housing conditions are acceptable, that responsibility falls within the department, and we think that the call they have that them powers transferred to council without relevant budgets is hot air. Now we've had experience of the transfer of functions from government departments in the past, and we've seen that comes with those pressures being put on our ratepayers, and all of this, when we're sitting in this council, we're coming at it with a focus to protect our ratepayers. The private tenancies bill was referred to, and the private tenancies bill was a commitment from a minister to ensure that it was her determination to ensure that all rents are fair and tenants are protected in their homes. And Deirdre, the Minister Hargy, indicated that bill was only the beginning of the private sector reform, and it was the foundation of a much bigger piece of work that the department was committed to do. Now, we've had various discussions around the failure of the DUP in their own selfish interests, punishing people that within our city and district. They're punishing those that are struggling with higher rents, and they're not affording the necessary protection from landlords who are exploiting the housing crisis that we're experiencing in our city and district. The amendment in red is a practical example of what we can do without any party political stunts that unfortunately we've become accustomed to. We want to look at practical examples, what we can do as a council to try and progress this and raise concerns and issues that affect ratepayers in the city and district. So I am proposing that they take out the party political nonsense and focus in on the real issue here. Working with housing organisations, well-established organisations right across the north to protect renters. Look at practical ways forward, look at workable ways forward, and not come up with nonsense that's going to put things that are outside of our competence, that's going to undo a lot of the great work that has been started by the Minister Hargy. And we hope that our members in this chamber can support that and put aside their own personal selfish interests. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson, Councillor Doyle.
Thanks, Mayor.
Are you happy to speak on the amendment?
Yeah, with whatever's handy. I agree with the thrust of what it is that we're talking about. But I do have to also point out, and I was considering an amendment to this myself, but I felt just a conversation about it would be sufficient. Not only is it now that private renters, and I am one, are facing increased rents, but so are social housing tenants. And where before social housing, when you could get it, was almost a haven in terms of the level of rent and the level of support that you would have got, for example, through the local housing allowance. Now that protection is being taken away. I'm sure most of us are aware that Apex and Radius in particular have put up their social rents recently. The housing executive, of course, did as well. To give you an example, a 3-bed house in Skeg at the moment costs you £615 a month. If you take into consideration that there are people out there who are sick who can't make up that gap, the social rented sector now is becoming something of a larger version of what we have in terms of private rented sector, because whilst you have those protections, the protections aren't really much use to you if the very basic tenet of where you're coming from is that you can't pay your rent because you're sick, because you're maybe in the long term sick, because you're disabled. So I would have liked to have seen a focus as well on social rents. In terms of the rent controls, my concern about this is twofold. One, it comes down to, I don't necessarily know if, and Councillor Jackson referred to the word competency. I don't know if, as an organisation, we should be touching anything to do with rents, even if we did have the powers, because I don't necessarily trust that we could find a balance. And I also don't necessarily, my problem with the Department for Communities managing this isn't political at all. What my fear would be is if the Stormont Executive, for example, falls again for another couple of years, all those protections fall behind. So just wanted to widen out that conversation about Mayor, but support the motion in front of us.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, we're happy to support the motion. Like I said before in the previous motion, this is an extreme issue for many people. I must declare, I'm a private renter as well, and I think many people in my situation and my age at the moment struggle to get on the housing market, and that causes real anxiety for many families. Like I said before, there's households going from £600 right up to £1,400. Mayor, I've seen even rooms going for £500 per calendar month, because we're coming to a society where people want to get as much money as possible out of their properties. And then I do see the landlords aspect of it, that the interest rate is going up so much that their mortgages, it's not viable for them to rent anymore. I think councils in England have a lot more responsibility. I don't think there is an appetite here in Northern Ireland to give councils that responsibility, because it's an assembly. But this hasn't been fixed in the assembly in the last 10, 20 years anyway. So I see no issue with councils stepping in and asking for that power. I think our councils could probably do a better job if they had the resources behind it, like some of the councils in England. We're happy to support the amendment because, like I said before, we can ask for it, but I don't think we're going to get it. So at least, if we're not going to get it, we might as well write to the permanent secretary as well and do something practical. So in principle, I have no problem at all supporting the motion, but I don't see us getting the powers anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Farrell, happy to speak on both?
Yeah, happy to speak on both, Mayor. So happy on behalf of the SDLP to support the motion and to support the amendment from Councillor Jackson. I think, it would be quite innovative if councils had the power to implement rent controls across their own city and district. So I would look forward to the response from the Tory minister, the permanent secretary at the EFC, and the head of the civil service. I think it'd be a useful tool in our arsenal, but it's not going to fix the housing problem across this city and district. And I would agree with Councillor Doyle's analysis about the issues in the social sector, where we're seeing massive increases in the housing executive and the housing associations. And I would remind members that only last month we agreed to write to DFC to ask them to increase the local housing allowance, so people on universal credit and housing benefit would have more money to pay the actual rent on the properties that they're renting. And we asked for an increased awareness campaign about the discretionary housing payment, which again would cushion the blow of these rent increases. But what we desperately need is a government in Stormont to fix this housing crisis. We need a government here to invest in social housing and affordable housing, so people aren't relying on the private rental market. And we need a government here to invest in our economy, invest in skills so we have more jobs and better jobs, so people can actually afford to buy their own homes, because that's a pipe dream for most people that live across this city and district. But we support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. That was bang on.
The thrust of the motion, I'll state that at the beginning, but like several have expressed some concerns, I'm like Councillor Doyle. I would be very lax that councils would move that much back into the housing sector to determine rents and the likes of that. And I agree with Councillor Jackson with regard to what is possible and what isn't possible. I mean, this particular issue is a devolved issue. And it rests within Stormont departments, and therefore the amendment to make contact with and engagement with the permanent secretary and therefore the department is quite logical. I would have preferred to see the last paragraph disappear, but it's there. Reminding ourselves that people fought to take housing and its whole, the whole situation around housing, whether it's providing housing and giving out houses to people and all of that sort of stuff, people fought to actually get rid of that. And now people are looking for a wee bite of that cherry back again. And that I would be concerned about. I would be concerned about that. But the general thrust of the motion, I'm content with, and content enough to say that I can support the motion as amended. But still concerned about that last paragraph, but on the general overall. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Councillor Donnelly.
Good Chair. Chair, like some of the previous speakers, I have no problem with the sentiments and the reasoning behind this, but I think the reality of the system here is that it probably won't work. The powers that council already have regarding environmental health and that, a lot of people are just too afraid to contact council, because when their landlord knows that they've done it, they're given 28 days to be evicted. I've spoke to somebody in the last week, and that was the response from their landlord, having tried to clear up, some damp issues through council. There's a lot of unscrupulous landlords in this town. It's full of them. I myself witnessed a conversation with somebody who'd come to me to fill in a discretionary support grant, having just moved into a new apartment, and the owner, who is he owns a firm, a number of brothers who have numerous properties right throughout the city, told him to make sure you get, I overheard the conversation saying, make sure you get that discretionary payment and we will half it. This is a multi-millionaire firm. I overheard it, and it wasn't filled in. They're not filling in a discretionary form for some multi-millionaire landlord to take half of somebody's money. I'm aware of some of the more so-called reputable housing associations and some of the stuff that's going on there. I don't think it can be controlled with the current system that's here. And I would like a recorded vote, because I do believe that there's landlords in this council, and I don't believe that they should be voting on this without declaring an interest. So I would like a recorded vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harkin, I'm just checking. Did you want to speak on the amendment? No? Yes. Oh, yes, go ahead then.
Yeah, we're happy to support the amendment. We think we should press all the buttons that could attempt to do something. So we're fine with engaging with the Permanent Secretary at the DFC. Councillor Jackson mentioned the private tenancies bill, and we did welcome aspects of it. I think that if enacted, it will give tenants more rights, but it didn't go far enough, and it didn't deal with regulating prices, rental prices, and it didn't set the stage for any kind of freeze during the cost of living crisis. And that is now the main problem. So we can either sit in our hands and do nothing and wait for the DUP to decide, that there's not going to be a nationalist first minister, or we can try to do something. I don't think things happen. I think you have to push and try and see what comes out of it. So pressing on Stormont, pressing on the Secretary of State to say that we should have the ability to do this, as they've done in Bristol, where they're being forced into the same action as us because of the failure of the Tories in Westminster to deal with regulation of rental costs in a growing private market. And I agree with Councillor Donnelly. I think aspects of this are out of control, and that there's tenants are in a weak state, and that we have to figure out mechanisms to do something about it. I mean, there are people who are going to be evicted. So our ratepayers are tenants of private landlords, and so we have to try and figure out a way of doing something, given that we've got no government. And just quickly on social housing, there are mechanisms to try and rein in rent. They're not working. We did the council did call for rent freezes by the housing executive and by the housing associations. The housing executive has so far ignored us, and the housing associations wrote back and said, sure, you raised your rates, that we had to do the same thing. So there are mechanisms. I think that rents across the board are far too high. We're going to see people threatened with eviction. Ideally, we would need something like they did in the South last year, which was the eviction bill, or ban eviction bill, but there's not going to be a Stormont right now that could even act on that. So we have to find something. Otherwise, we're simply sitting on our hands and doing nothing.
Thank you. So on the amendment, I think that we have support for the amendment. So that now becomes a substantive motion. And then on the substantive motion, open it to the floor to see if there's any, allow Councillor Neil to sum up, then we'll go to the recorded vote. Okay, Councillor Neil, if you wish to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Harkin has covered a lot of the key points. I think just rather than looking at this as a political stunt, as Councillor Jackson says, I think what about looking at it as a way of actually helping people who live in our council district. We're being pushed to do this and to explore this as an option because we're living in very unprecedented times, and we need to do something. To do something new and to do something different is okay. To explore if we can do this with added resource as well is okay. There's nothing wrong with doing that, because at the end of the day, if it's going to help people who's living in our council district, then it's a good thing. In terms of social housing, totally agree with all the points made around social housing. The reason that we did discuss including that within this motion, but the reason that we didn't was because we had made a proposal around social housing rents last month. But I think it's an important issue, which is very, very similar. Councils are the only functioning government body at the moment operating here in the north. So, if we can actually make a difference and actually operate to help people, then we absolutely should. And as Councillor Harkin had said, in the response 2.11 to motions from the letters to the housing associations and housing executive last month, the housing executive didn't reply, but the chief executive of the housing association had made a justification for their rental hikes, citing our council's rate hike. And I think that if we can actually do something meaningful, then we have a leg to stand on when we're calling out other public bodies when they're actually implementing austerity. So thank you for all the words of support.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Okay, I'm going to call on the Chief Executive to take us through a recorded vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Devaney. Alderman Hussey.
Four.
Okay. Alderman Carrigan. Alderman McMorris.
Four.
Or John, Alderman Kerrigan.
Who's in?
Alderman Carrigan.
Carrigan. Alderman Wark. Councillor Jason Barr. Councillor Raymond Barr. Councillor Michaela Boyle.
Four.
Councillor Carr. Councillor Cusick.
John, just to state that I declared an interest at the start in the chat box, but happy to declare it on here again and more than happy to support. Thank you.
John Boyd here. You didn't call my name out.
Sorry, Councillor Boyle, I didn't think you were on the meeting.
Oh, I'm still here. Yes, I never left. I'm for anyway, John. Thanks.
Four. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Cusick, can you clarify, are you voting?
Yes, happy to support.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Doyle. Councillor Alex Duffy. Councillor Sandra Duffy.
Four.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farrell.
For John, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards.
Farrell.
Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Logue. Councillor McGinley. Councillor McGowan.
For.
Councillor McGuire. Councillor McHugh.
For.
Councillor McKinney. Councillor Mooney. Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Riley.
For.
Councillor Sinoy Barr. Tierney. Mayor and Claire, all of those voting are unanimous.
Well, thank you. So that motion has passed unanimously. So thank you. Moving on now, so that concludes our business of motions. We have a number of items now that are open for information. I'm just going to take them as read unless somebody indicates that they want to take anything out of them. Nope. I do have another piece of business that I would request a proposer and a seconder to bring us into confidential just prior to we leave. Proposed, Councillor McGinley, seconded by Councillor Ferguson.
Mayor, with your indulgence, one moment before we do go into confidence. Thank you. I just want to say a thank you to three of my former Strabane council colleagues who are now departing the political scene. We're constitutionally totally opposed, but I do have to say that when it came to bread and butter issues impacting in our area, we were able to work together, and I think that's what it's about. So to Dan, to Kieran, and to Michaela, thank you for your company in the chambers over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey, and I'm sure they appreciate your warm wishes. So thank you. So into confidential, we go.